Hey everyone, this is Mia Horror Stories, and the title of today's horror story is The Rules for the Historic Prison Tour Change Entirely After Midnight. For your comfort, the screen will stay black throughout the video, so you can relax without strain and just focus on the story. Make sure you stick around until the end. Sometimes the last few moments are the ones that stay with you the longest. The first rule card was still laminated in clean plastic when we found it on the floor outside cell block 7. But the list printed inside it was wrong. Not strange wrong. Not horror movie wrong. Just wrong enough that all 4 of us stood there longer than we should have, staring at it under the weak yellow spill of a security light, listening to the heating pipes tick inside the old prison walls like somebody tapping a spoon against iron. The card said the midnight tour group had to keep 10 feet between each person at all times. 5 minutes earlier, the guide had told us the exact opposite. Stay close, she'd said. This place eats sound, and I don't have the lungs to shout down every corridor. My name is Nathan Rourke, 32 male, and at the time I was trying to convince myself I had only come to the old prison because it would make a good story for my channel, not because my little sister had asked me to do something normal with her before she moved across the country. I lived in Philadelphia then, in a 3rd-floor walk-up near South Street with a radiator that screamed at 2 in the morning and a kitchen window that looked straight into my neighbor's bathroom if both of us were unlucky. I made videos about abandoned buildings, bad local legends, and tourist traps that charged $26 to show you a basement and call it haunted. I told people I was skeptical because skepticism sounded professional. The truth was worse. I hated not being in control of a room. That was the thing I never said out loud. Not to my sister, not to my friends, not even to myself unless I was awake too late and the apartment had gone flat and quiet around me. It booked the midnight tour at the old prison because my sister, Mia Rourke, 27 female, had texted me 3 weeks earlier with a link and a row of skull emojis. Mia was a nurse at Jefferson, the kind of person who could eat vending machine crackers after a 12-hour shift and still remember the name of a patient's dog. She had been offered a job in Portland, Maine, and was leaving in 9 days. She said she wanted one last, dumb Philly thing before she went. Her words, not mine. She said it like she was kidding, but I knew her well enough to hear the soft part under it. I nearly said no. I had edits due. My sponsor wanted a Halloween-adjacent video, even though it was February, and the city still had dirty snow frozen in the gutters. I had a parking ticket tucked into my visor. I had a headache that started behind my right eye whenever I thought about being trapped in a group where I couldn't leave without making a scene. Instead, I said, only if I can film B-roll. Mia sent back, you're disgusting. Fine. So there we were, just before midnight, standing in front of a historic prison in Philadelphia that looked less like a museum and more like a castle the city had forgotten to demolish. The walls rose in long stone faces from Fairmount Avenue, dark and rough, and damp from a late winter drizzle. Cars hissed past toward Broad Street. Somewhere behind us, a bus braked with a tired sigh. You could smell wet asphalt, cigarette smoke from the corner, and that old masonry smell, like rain trapped in rock. The tour entrance was lit by 2 floodlights and a crooked sign that read Night History Experience special access tour. The word haunted did not appear anywhere, which was funny because every person in line had clearly come hoping for ghosts. Besides Mia and me, there were 6 other guests waiting by the gate when we arrived. I remember them too clearly now because of how ordinary they were. Ordinary people do not stay ordinary in your memory after a bad night. They become evidence. Lena Morris, 30, female, stood ahead of us with a canvas tote bag pressed under one arm and rain beating on the shoulders of her green parka. She taught 8th grade history in Wilmington and had the alert, patient look of someone who spent her days detecting lies before they became fires. She had brought her husband, Caleb Morris, 31, male, who kept rubbing one thumb over the face of his smartwatch as though he could make time behave by polishing it. Caleb worked in software security and had the narrow-eyed calm of a man who thought every locked door had an exploit if you understood the system. Behind them were 2 college kids from Boston, Trevor Hale, 22, male, and Priya Shah, 21, female. Trevor wore a red socks cap backward and kept narrating things to his phone under his breath, making little jokes for a live stream that had maybe 12 viewers. Priya had purple gloves, sharp eyeliner, and the expression of somebody who had agreed to this because saying no would have caused more trouble than going. She laughed at Trevor's jokes, but half a beat late. The last 2 guests were Martin Voss, 46, male, and his daughter Ellie Voss, 16, female. Martin was from Lancaster, broad-shouldered, quiet, with water darkening the brim of his old Eagles cap. He looked like the kind of dad who checked tire pressure before road trips and carried napkins in every jacket. Ellie had earbuds in one ear and a paperback folded open in her pocket. She was trying very hard to seem bored, which only made her look young. A guard buzzed us through the gate at 11:52 p.m. The sound was harsh and electric, wrong against all that stone. Our guide met us inside the first courtyard under a hanging lamp that swung slightly in the wind. She was maybe in her early 40s, but fatigue can make ages slippery. Her name tag said Rachel Baines, 43, female. Rachel wore a black museum jacket over a gray hoodie, a radio clipped to her shoulder, and old leather boots that looked like they had done more walking than some cars. Her hair was pulled into a loose knot, and she had a small scar at the edge of her chin, pale against the cold reddened skin. "Midnight group?" she asked. Trevor raised his phone. "That's us. Are we allowed to record?" Rachel looked at the phone, then at him. "You can record in the open areas. No flash. No live streaming in restricted sections. If I say put it away, put it away." "Restricted sections," Trevor said, grinning. "Historic building," she said. "Falling plaster, uneven floors, exposed metal, low ceilings. The exciting stuff is mostly liability." Mia leaned toward me and whispered, "That's what you should call your channel. My brand has dignity. Your last video was about a haunted bowling alley. It had 16,000 views. And asbestos, alleged asbestos." Rachel clapped her hands once, not loud, but sharp enough to bring the group in. "Okay, before we start, a few rules. I know you've all signed the waiver. That doesn't mean you read it." Caleb gave a tiny nod, as if appreciating the assumption. Rachel held up one gloved hand and counted on her fingers. "Stay with the group. Do not enter cells unless I say it's okay. Do not touch doors, bars, bedding, display objects, electrical boxes, or anything that looks interesting. especially if it looks interesting. No running, no smoking, no vaping, no drinking. If you feel dizzy, cold, anxious, claustrophobic, embarrassed, annoyed, or like you might faint because you skipped dinner, tell me. We can stop. Her eyes landed briefly on me when she said anxious, though there was no reason they should have. I had both hands in my jacket pockets to hide the fact that I was squeezing my own thumb hard enough to ache. Mia nudged me with her elbow. You good? Fine. You're doing that jaw thing. I have a jaw. It does things. She smiled, but she watched me a second longer. Rachel continued. The site closes to regular staff at midnight. Maintenance is here until 1. Security is on site all night, and my radio connects to both. That said, these walls interfere with reception. Your phones may drop service inside. That's normal. The building is stone, metal, and bad decisions. That got a small laugh. The prison swallowed it quickly. We entered through a heavy door into the first corridor, and the city noise thinned behind us. I had visited the place once on a school trip in 7th grade, but memory had cleaned it up, made it brighter and simpler. At night, it felt less like a landmark, and more like a machine left running after everyone forgot its purpose. The corridor stretched ahead in a long, arched line. Cell doors stood open on either side, their bars painted over so many times the layers had bubbled and chipped. A few museum placards glowed behind protective plastic. A pipe clanked overhead, followed by a slow drip somewhere deep enough that I could not place it. The air smelled of lime dust, rust, old wood, and the faint sourness of wet wool from our coats. Rachel spoke as we walked, her voice low but practiced. She told us about solitary confinement, reform ideals, the radial design, the way the prison had once been considered modern and humane by people who did not have to sleep inside it. She did not try to scare us. I liked her for that. Talked about architecture, overcrowding, budget cuts, riots, preservation problems, human failures, bureaucratic failures, the real ghosts. I filmed 30 seconds of a corridor with my phone held against my chest to stabilize the shot. The screen brightened the bars into blue-gray lines. Mia stepped beside me. You're actually enjoying this. I enjoy educational programming. You enjoy decay. That too. Mom asked if you're coming Sunday. I kept the phone up. Subtle. She made biryani. Then yes. She also asked if you're mad at me. That made me lower the phone. We had reached an intersection where 3 cell blocks met under a central hub. A skylight above showed only a square of black sky, rain ticking faintly against the glass. Rachel had paused to answer Lena's question about restoration grants. The others drifted in a loose half circle. I'm not mad, I said. You've been weird. You're moving 10 hours away. 7.5. In whose car? She looked down the corridor. I didn't ask you to stop me. I know. I also didn't ask you to pretend it's nothing. There it was, the thing underneath the dumb Philly outing. Mia could walk into blood, vomit, grief, and fluorescent hospital chaos without blinking, but she hated emotional mess. She would approach it sideways, through jokes, or logistics, or midnight prison tour. I wanted to say something good. Older brother good. Something that would fix the distance already forming before she had even packed her kitchen. Instead, I said, I'm here, aren't I? She nodded once, accepting the answer because she did not want to argue in front of strangers. But I saw it land badly. Rachel called us over to the entrance of cell block 7. This wing is usually closed during day tour, she said. Structural stabilization started last year, paused for funding, restarted paused again. You'll see temporary bracing and covered sections. Keep your hands off the supports. They're not props. It into the block was black iron and taller than it needed to be. Rachel unlocked it with a key from a ring attached to her belt by a retractable cable. The click carried down the corridor and came back thinner. The temperature dropped as soon as we stepped through. Not impossible, not dramatic, just enough that everyone noticed and nobody wanted to be the first to say it. Old buildings hold pockets of air. That was all. Trevor said, "Okay, that's sick." Priya said, "You say that when food arrives too." "I contain multitudes." Ellie pulled out one earbud. "Dad, is it colder in here?" Martin touched her shoulder. "Keep your jacket zipped." Rachel turned back to us. Cell block 7 had plumbing failures for decades. Water intrusion, bad insulation, broken windows before the museum took over. It's colder because it's damp. Watch your step. A work light had been clipped to a temporary beam halfway down the corridor, casting the walls in a raw white glare that made every peeling surface look medical. Plastic sheeting hung over 2 cells, moving gently in air I couldn't feel. There were signs everywhere: "Do not cross," "Staff only," "Uneven floor," "Hard hat area beyond this point." My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number appeared, then vanished before I could read more than 3 words. "Rules have changed." The screen went black. I stopped walking. Mia turned. "What?" My phone died. "You charged it in the car." It was at 60%. She held out her hand. "Let me see." I pressed the power button. Nothing. No battery symbol. No emergency screen. Just black glass reflecting a slice of my own face. Caleb, a few steps ahead, glanced back. "Cold can kill batteries fast." "Not that fast," I said. He shrugged. "Depends on the battery." It was an explanation, a reasonable one. My phone was old. The port was loose. I had dropped it in a sink once and lied to myself about the rice helping. Still, I could feel the text sitting behind my eyes. Rules have changed. "Everything okay?" Rachel asked. "Phone died," I said. "Common in here. We'll be back near the hub in 15. I nodded and slipped the useless thing into my pocket, annoyed at the small wash of panic that came with losing the screen. I hated that too. The dependence. The little rectangle as exit sign, map, witness, excuse. We moved on. Rachel showed us one of the preserved cells through the bars. A narrow bed frame, a bucket, a Bible replica, a tiny skylight cut into the vaulted ceiling. "Imagine being alone in this room 23 hours a day," Lena said softly. Trevor lowered his phone. For once, he had no joke. Somewhere behind us, metal scraped. Everyone turned. The sound came again, a slow drag followed by a soft bump. Rachel's expression changed before her body moved. Not fear, assessment. She raised one hand, telling us to stay put, and shone her flashlight back toward the gate. "Maintenance," she called. The corridor held her voice and returned it in pieces. No answer. Another bump. Priya stepped closer to Trevor. Martin moved slightly in front of Ellie without making a big show of it. Mia looked at me, and I saw her hospital face come on, focused, calm, waiting for information. Rachel pressed the button on her shoulder radio. "Rachel to base, can you confirm maintenance in 7? Static answered. Then a man's voice broke through, flattened by interference. "Say again. Can you confirm maintenance in cell block 7? A hiss, a crackle, something like a cough. Then no maintenance in 7. Rachel did not move for half a second. Caleb said, "Could be the plastic." "Could be," Rachel said. She walked back toward the gate, slow, flashlight beam moving low over the floor. Nobody followed at first. Then Lena took one step, maybe because leaving someone alone felt worse than disobeying. Caleb caught her sleeve. She gave him a look, and he let go. Rachel reached the gate. The laminated rule card lay on the floor just inside it. It had not been there when we entered. I was almost sure, not completely sure. That was the maddening part. Old floor, bad lighting, 8 guests, guide talking, rain tapping overhead. Maybe it had been tucked near the wall. Maybe someone's boot had kicked it loose. Rachel bent and picked it up. "What is it?" Mia asked. Rachel did not answer right away. She wiped grit off the plastic with her thumb and read. Her mouth tightened. The radio on her shoulder gave a short pop of static that made Ellie flinch. Trevor tried to laugh. New waiver. Rachel looked past us down the corridor, not at any person exactly. Then she turned the card around. The heading said Midnight Tour Rules, CELLBLOCK7. Under it, in plain black type, were 6 numbered instructions. Keep 10 feet between each guest at all times. Do not speak while passing occupied cells. If a guide gives instructions that contradict this card, request a second guide. Do not look into cell 7B after 12:17 a.m. Count your group at every gate. Do not proceed with extra guests. The tour ends only when the gate closes behind you. For a second, nobody spoke. Then Trevor said, too loud, "That is incredible." Priya hit his arm. "Don't. No, I mean, come on. That's obviously part of it." "It isn't," Rachel said. Those 2 words did more than the card had. They took the fun out of the air. Rachel turned the card over. The back was blank except for a printed museum logo and a small QR code. She scanned it with her flashlight as though the paper itself had insulted her. Caleb leaned in, careful not to touch it. "Looks professionally printed. The museum uses these for school groups," Rachel said. "Daytime rule cards, different text." "So someone swapped it," Lena said. Rachel looked toward the gate again. "Or dropped it." "Dropped it when?" Martin asked. Rachel's jaw worked once. "It's what I'm going to find out." Mia said, "What's cell 7B?" Rachel's eyes flicked down the corridor. "A cell? That's not an answer. It's an empty cell." The radio crackled again. "Rachel," she pressed it. "Go. Everything okay?" Rachel kept looking down the corridor. "We found a card in 7, not ours." A pause. Then the radio voice said, "Bring the group back to the hub." Rachel answered immediately, "Copy." I felt relief so sharp it embarrassed me. Back to the hub. Back through the gate. Back to the part with working lights and fewer warning signs. Maybe back outside under the rain and traffic, where a stupid prank could become a refund and a story. Rachel tucked the card under her arm. "We're going to step back for a minute." Trevor groaned. "Seriously, we just got to the good part." "The good part is not getting sued," Rachel said. We started toward the gate. That was when the work light halfway down cell block 7 went out. Not flickered, not dimmed. Out. Corridor snapped into Rachel's flashlight beam and the yellow emergency bulb above the gate. Beyond the beam, plastic sheeting whispered against itself. Someone exhaled through their teeth. My eyes tried to assemble shapes from the dark and kept getting it wrong. Rachel stopped. "Everyone stay where you are." Caleb's watch lit his wrist. "It's 12:14. "Did anyone touch the cable?" Rachel asked. "No," Martin said. "I didn't," Trevor said, less offended than scared. The radio made a wet clicking sound. Rachel raised it. "Base, the work light in 7 just failed. We're returning to hub." No answer. "Base, static." Then the man's voice came through, but farther away this time, chopped into pieces. "Don't bring," Rachel pressed the radio closer to her ear. Repeat. Gate closed. The signal died. Mia whispered. That sounded like don't bring. Nobody knows what it sounded like, I said too quickly. She looked at me. I hated the old instinct in myself, the need to flatten fear before it had a name. Hated it more because I was scared too. Rachel unclipped a small flashlight from her belt and handed it to Martin. Point that at the floor, slowly. Everyone watch your footing. We go back together. What about the 10 feet thing? Priya asked. Rachel looked at the rule card under her arm, then down the corridor toward the dark, then back at us. The card isn't procedure, she said. But your radio just told you to bring us back, Caleb said. Then maybe not to bring us back. It's interference. Was it? Lena said his name quietly. Caleb. He pushed his glasses up the bridge of his nose. I'm not trying to be difficult, but if this is a prank, we should leave. If it isn't a prank, we should still leave. The only question is whether walking back through that gate is safer than waiting here for security to come to us. Rachel did not snap at him. That made me trust her more and feel worse. She looked at the group one by one, counting us with her eyes. Me, Mia, Lena, Caleb, Trevor, Priya, Martin, Ellie, 8 guests, 1 guide. Rain tapped the high windows. Pipes ticked. From somewhere deeper in the block came a tiny metallic sound, like a screw dropping onto concrete and rolling until it met a wall. Rachel swallowed. Okay, she said. Here's the choice. We can move back to the hub now together, with lights on the floor and nobody wandering. Or we can stay right here while I try the radio again and wait for base to come to the 7 gate. Trevor opened his mouth, then closed it. Ellie slipped her remaining earbud out. Nobody joked. The old prison settled around us with its damp stone smell and its rusted doors and its corridors built by men who believed isolation could improve a soul. Rachel held the wrong rule card against her side, like evidence she did not want to submit yet. At 12:15 a.m., with the gate visible behind us and cell 7B somewhere ahead in the dark, we stood in a line that was no longer a tour group and tried to decide which set of rules we were willing to trust. Nobody wanted to be the first one to vote wrong. That was the stupid part. Adults, most of us, standing in a shut-down prison wing after midnight with bad lights, and a guide who suddenly looked less like a tour guide and more like somebody trying to remember emergency training she had only skimmed. And still, for a few seconds, the room had that awkward dinner table feeling. Who speaks first? Who makes it serious? Who admits the fun thing isn't fun anymore? Rachel solved it for us. We're going back to the hub, she said. No debate. Martin, keep that light low. Everyone stay close enough to see the person in front of you. Do not touch the walls. Caleb raised one finger. You just said no debate, but then don't. I'm not trying to undermine you. You are. I'm trying to make sure we don't walk into a problem we already know exists. Rachel turned on him, and the beam from her flashlight cut across his rain-specked glasses. Problem is this wing has no reliable radio, no working work light, and a group of civilians in an active stabilization area. Procedure is to get you back to the central hub. And the card said count at every gate, Priya said. Rachel's mouth tightened. The card is not procedure. But counting is harmless, Lena said, her voice careful, teacher voice. To escalation without making anyone feel handled. Right, we're 9 including you. Rachel looked annoyed at the logic of it, but she nodded once. And we count. She pointed with the flashlight as if assigning seats on a bus. Nathan, here, I said, then immediately hated myself for answering like roll call. Mia, here. Lena, yes. Caleb, here. Trevor. Trevor lifted his phone, which had become a useless black rectangle. Present and increasingly opposed to the vibe. Priya, here. Martin, here. Ellie. Ellie's voice came small from behind him. Here. Rachel, she finished. 9, we move. For 3 steps, it worked. That is how most bad decisions disguise themselves at first. They work just long enough to become decisions you can't take back. Martin's flashlight painted the floor in a jittering oval, catching broken grit, water stains, little curls of old paint. Rachel walked backward for a few paces, keeping us in her beam, then turned and led us toward the gate. The emergency bulb above it glowed dim and yellow, a sick little sun. Beyond the bars, I could see the corridor to the hub. Open space, better light, exit signs. My body wanted to go there so badly that every muscle leaned toward it. Mia walked beside me. Too close, according to the wrong card, just close enough, according to Rachel. I could hear her breathing through her nose. Calm, controlled. She had done that in hospital elevators before hard cases, a measured breath in, a longer one out. I used to tease her about it. I wasn't teasing now. You okay? She asked without looking at me. Yeah, don't lie for sport. I'm functioning. That's not the same. It's what's available. She almost smiled. Then the gate buzzed, not the sharp release buzz from earlier. This was lower. A grinding electric hum that started inside the lock housing and crawled through the bars. Rachel froze with her hand inches from the gate handle. Don't touch it, Caleb said. Rachel didn't need him to say it. She pulled her hand back. The hum stopped. Then the gate magnet clacked. The gate did not open. Rachel tried her radio. Base, 7 gate is not releasing. Repeat, 7 gate is not releasing. Static. She tried the handle anyway carefully, using 2 fingers on the lower part like the metal might bite. The gate shuddered in its frame and held. Is it locked? Trevor asked. Rachel gave him a look. Yes, but you have a key. The key operates the mechanical cylinder. The magnetic lock releases from security. Caleb stepped forward, then stopped when Rachel snapped. Do not crowd the gate. He held up both hands. Maglocks fail locked if they lose power, depending on configuration. This building has backup power, Rachel said. Maybe not to this gate. It opened 5 minutes ago. 5 minutes ago the work light worked. That landed. Rain tapped the high glass above us. Somewhere behind the walls, plumbing gave a deep knock, then another, like an old radiator waking angry. The corridor felt narrower with the gate shut. I could see the hub, but the bars made it a picture of safety, not safety itself. Rachel knelt by a small metal box mounted on the wall near the frame. She wiped dust from its face and lifted a hinged cover. Inside was a keypad and a little red indicator light. Manual override, Caleb asked. Staff code, Rachel said. She punched in 6 numbers. The keypad beeped once. The red light stayed red. She punched them again slower. Same beep, no release. Her face changed in a way I did not like. What? Lena asked. Code didn't take. Could you have mistyped? Trevor said. Rachel turned slowly. Just asking, he said, softer. She tried a 3rd time, a longer beep, then nothing. Rachel stood and spoke into her radio with deliberate calm. Base staff access code is not releasing 7 gate. I need security to open from the hub side. We have 8 guests inside. No injuries. The radio spat static. A voice broke through, thin and warped. Rachel, confirm your count. Rachel closed her eyes briefly. 8 guests, 1 guide. Say again. 8 guests, 1 guide. A burst of static chewed the next words. Then we heard, "We show gate opened at 12:08 and closed at 12:11. Rachel looked at the gate hinges. "That's impossible. The gate has been open." Caleb leaned toward the keypad. "Could the system log be wrong?" "Base," Rachel said, ignoring him. "Can you release remotely?" A pause. "Negative. Panel says open." Rachel stared at the locked gate. Mia said, "If it thinks it's open, maybe it won't send another release." Caleb nodded. "Door position sensor failure, or someone bypassed it." Priya rubbed her gloved palms down the sides of her coat. "Someone, maintenance issue," Rachel said sharply, but she did not sound convinced. Another voice came over the radio, different this time. Female, older, clipped. "Rachel, this is Darlene. Keep the group at 7 gate. I'm sending Ray from security with a manual key." "How long?" Rachel asked. 5 minutes. 5 minutes is not long unless you are trapped somewhere. Then it becomes a full weather system. It presses on your ears. It changes how people stand. Rachel turned to us. "We wait here. Nobody wanders. Nobody films. My phone's dead anyway," Trevor muttered. "So is mine," Priya said. That made us all look at her. She pressed her power button. Nothing. It was at 80. Caleb checked his own. "Mine's on, but no service." He held it up. "Batteries dropping fast." Mia pulled hers out. "Mine too." I did not like how everyone reached for a screen at once, like people checking wounds after a crash. Small private lights came up. Caleb's phone showed 22% and falling. Mia's showed 9. Trevor's wouldn't start. Ellie's had a cracked case, and a lock screen photo of a dog had flickered once, then dimmed hard enough that she tapped it with her thumb. "Dad," Martin looked over. "Save the battery." "I didn't do anything. Just put it away." She did, but her face had gone pinched. Lena turned to Rachel. "Could there be some kind of electrical issue in the wing?" "Something draining devices," Caleb answered before Rachel could. "Cold, old batteries, poor signal causing power drain, maybe interference from equipment. It's not impossible." "Thank you," Rachel said. He looked at her. "I didn't say good." A sound came from farther down cell block 7, not the screw roll sound from before. This was heavier. A door moving. One slow hinge complaint, metal on metal, ending with a dull tap. Rachel's flashlight snapped down the corridor. The beam stopped on the plastic sheeting 20 yards away. It moved in a lazy inward billow, then settled. Behind it were 2 covered cells, and the dark mouth of the corridor continuing past the work area. "Is that the way to 7B?" Mia asked. Rachel didn't answer fast enough. "It is," Caleb said, looking at the rule card still tucked under Rachel's arm. Rachel pulled the card out, folded it once, and shoved it into her jacket pocket, as if hiding it could undo it. "Nobody is going down there." Trevor swallowed. "Great, strong agreement." We waited. At first, waiting felt like doing something. We stood near the gate with our backs to the bars, flashlights pointed into the wing, the way people in movies stand when they know exactly where the danger is. But real fear is untidy. People shifted. Trevor kept whispering to Priya, and she kept telling him to stop. Caleb crouched near the keypad, not touching it, studying the seams of the box. Lena watched Rachel more than she watched the corridor. Martin kept one arm in front of Ellie, and Ellie stared at the floor like she was trying not to cry by force. Mia stayed beside me. I kept looking at the hub through the bars. The exit sign out there buzzed faintly, green and ordinary. That was the part that started grinding at me. Safety was not far away. It was 10 feet beyond the locked gate, maybe 15. I could see the wide central space where Rachel had talked about architecture, the benches where school groups probably sat, the smooth path back toward the courtyard. I could map the route in my head. Gate, hub, entry corridor, courtyard door, outside air. But the map was useless if the door did not open. I pressed my thumb into the side of my index finger until the nail hurt. Mia noticed. Of course she did. Nate, don't. I didn't say anything. You used the nurse voice. I'm your sister. I have several annoying voices. I'm fine. She leaned in slightly. You're about to start managing everyone because you can't manage yourself. That stung because it was accurate. My flaw was not panic, exactly. Panic would have been cleaner. My flaw was needing the room to obey me when I got scared. I made plans. I corrected people. I took charge of things I did not understand. When we were kids and our dad got sick, I became the 10-year-old who reminded adults about pills and bills and whether the stove was off. Everyone praised me for being responsible, so I never learned how ugly responsibility could get when it was just fear wearing a clean shirt. I'm not managing anyone, I said. Behind us, Caleb said. There may be a release plate on the other side. I turned. Can you open it? Mia closed her eyes. Nathan, Caleb stood. I said there may be. Not that I can pick a museum-grade lock with my bare hands. Rachel stepped between him and the gate. Nobody tampers with the lock. We're locked in, I said. Tampering feels relative. We wait for security. It's been longer than 5 minutes. Rachel checked her watch. So did Caleb. 12:21 a.m. that moved through us without anyone saying why. 12:17 had passed. Nobody had looked into cell 7B because nobody had gone near it, and that should have made the rule ridiculous. Instead, it made the corridor beyond the plastic feel occupied by a deadline we had missed without knowing what it meant. Rachel pressed her radio. Base, status on Ray, static. Darlene, status on Ray, nothing. She tried again. Base, respond. The radio clicked twice. Then a voice, very faint. Not at gate, Rachel lifted the radio higher, angling her body as if reception were a physical draft she could catch. Repeat. Ray is not static. Hub. Rachel's eyes went to the open space beyond the bars. The hub was empty. No security guard, no flashlight, no footsteps. Maybe he's coming another way, Lena said. Rachel said. There isn't another way to this gate. Caleb pointed down the block. What about the far end? No public access. That isn't what I asked. Rachel said nothing. A small sound came from Ellie. Not a scream, worse. A tight little breath that had gotten stuck halfway out. Martin turned. Elle, she pointed down at her shoes. Water was spreading across the floor. A thin black sheet, almost invisible until Martin's flashlight caught its shine. It moved from deeper in the cell block toward the gate, filling cracks in the concrete, carrying flecks of paint and grit. It touched the edge of Ellie's sneaker and curved around it. Rachel crouched, touched 2 fingers to the floor, then smelled them. What is it? Trevor asked. Water. From where? She stood. Cell block 7 has plumbing problems. Active plumbing? Lena asked. Old lines run under parts of the floor. There are drains. The water crept wider. Caleb moved his flashlight beam along it. It's moving toward us because this part slopes down. How deep can it get? Priya asked. It shouldn't get deep, Rachel said. That word shouldn't have become useless tonight. The radio crackled hard enough to make Rachel flinch. Darlene's voice came through, broken but understandable. Rachel, listen. We've got an alarm on the service panel in 7. Possible leak near the old boiler feed. Facilities says if water reaches the temporary power line, the breaker should trip, but they're not sure what's still live. You need to move the group off the low section. Rachel looked at the cable snaking from the dead work light across the floor near the plastic sheeting. A rubber line, half taped down, disappearing behind a brace. Base, the gate is locked, she said. I know. Ray is trying to override from the main panel. Ray isn't at the hub, a pause. What do you mean? Rachel stared through the bars. I mean, I can see the hub. He's not here. Static rose and fell like breathing. Then Darlene said, stay away from standing water. The radio cut out. For a second, the only sound was water ticking into water somewhere ahead of us. Then everyone moved at once. Not running, not yet, but that nervous animal shuffling people do when the floor beneath them becomes part of the threat. Martin lifted Ellie by the shoulders and moved her closer to the wall. Trevor backed into Priya and she shoved him off. Lena grabbed Caleb's sleeve this time and didn't let go. Rachel threw her flashlight beam across the floor, searching for the highest patch. Up on the left, she said, against the wall, slowly. Step where I step. The water was still shallow, barely enough to wet the soles, but the idea of electricity changed everything. Every cable became a snake. Every puddle became a decision. I looked at the gate, looked at the keypad, looked at the hub. I could not stand it. Rachel, give me the key, I said. She turned. No, the mechanical cylinder might still work if the maglock's confused. I already told you, then let me try. No, we can't stand in water waiting for a guard who isn't there. She came close enough that I could see the tired red veins at the corners of her eyes. And if you break the key in a 100-year-old gate while security is trying to release it from the panel, it's not a 100-year-old magnetic lock. You know what I mean. I know we're locked in. Mia grabbed my arm. Stop. The word was quiet, but it cut through me. I turned on her harder than I meant to. You have a better idea. She looked hurt for half a second. Then her face closed. Yes. Shut up and listen to the person who works here. I knew she was right. I also knew I was scared enough not to care. Water touched the edge of my boot. Cold, immediate, real. Rachel pointed to the left wall. Move now. We moved. The high strip along the wall was maybe 6 inches above the center of the corridor, where old concrete had lifted near the foundation. We lined up there awkwardly, backs near damp stone, facing the dark center of cell block 7. Rachel counted us again, voice clipped. Nathan. Here, Mia. Here, Lena. Here, Caleb. Here, Trevor. Here, Priya. Here, Martin. Here, Ellie. No answer. Martin spun. Ellie. She had been behind him 1 second earlier. The flashlight beam jerked. Ellie was 10 feet away, halfway toward the gate, standing ankle deep in the black water. Martin's voice cracked. I dropped my book, she said. It sounded absurd. A book. In all of this, she had gone after a book. But then I saw it floating near the center of the corridor, pages spread like a dead bird. Martin stepped off the raised strip. Rachel barked, "Don't." He stopped with one boot in the water. Ellie looked from him to us, suddenly understanding everyone's faces. "I'm sorry." "Stay still," Mia said, nurse voice now, full strength. "Ellie, don't move. Keep both feet where they are." The cable from the dead work light lay 6 or 7 feet behind her, partly under the water. Caleb said, "If the breaker tripped when the light went out, it may be dead." "Maybe," Lena snapped. "I know," Rachel spoke into the radio. "Base, we have a guest in standing water near the 7 gate. I need power confirmed off to temporary lines now. Static. Base. No response." Martin's breathing was loud. "I'm going to get her." "Wait," Mia said, "that's my daughter. And if there's current, you both go down." That stopped him because it had to. Ellie began to cry silently, tears shining on her cheeks in the flashlight beam. Her hands hovered at her sides, fingers spread, as though touching anything might complete a circuit. My own heartbeat was up in my throat. I looked at the distance, looked at the puddle, looked at the plastic "Do not cross" barrier poles stacked near the wall beside us. A plan formed. A plan is a drug when you're afraid. "We can bridge it," I said. "Use the plastic poles. Get her to shuffle toward the raised edge." Caleb looked. "Those aren't rated for weight. She's not climbing them. We use them to test the water and give her balance." Mia said, "Not metal, plastic." Rachel hesitated. That hesitation was permission enough for me, which was exactly the kind of thing Mia had warned me about. I grabbed one of the barrier poles. Rachel cursed under her breath, but didn't stop me. The plastic was slick and colder than I expected. I extended it toward Ellie, keeping my feet on the raised strip. "Ellie," I said, trying to make my voice sound like it belonged to someone calm. "Take the end. Don't step yet." She reached. Too far, her foot slid. Not much, just enough. Her sneaker made a wet squeak, and she windmilled one arm. Martin lunged. Mia caught the back of his jacket with both hands and nearly went down herself. Lena grabbed Mia's waist. For one ugly second, all three of them tilted toward the water. Ellie recovered, sobbing once. "Everybody stop moving," Rachel shouted. Her voice filled the corridor, cracked against the bars, and came back at us. Then, from beyond the plastic sheeting down the dark end of cell block 7, someone shouted back. "Rachel," a man's voice. Not on the radio, in the wing. Rachel went still. The water kept spreading. The voice came again, muffled but closer than it should have been. "Rachel, don't open the gate." Nobody breathed right. Rachel lifted her flashlight toward the plastic sheeting. "Ray," she called. The plastic stirred. A shape pressed against it from the other side, broad at the shoulders, bent slightly forward. Human, definitely human. The beam caught the outline through cloudy plastic. Jacket, arm, head, maybe a cap. Rachel took one step toward it, then stopped because the water was between them. "Ray, identify yourself," she said. The shape did not answer. Instead, behind us, the gate magnet clacked again. The red light on the keypad turned green. The gate eased open 2 inches toward the hub. Not enough to free us. Enough to make a choice. At the same moment, the plastic sheeting split with a long, soft rip from top to bottom, and the person behind it pushed one gloved hand through into our light. Rachel's radio crackled in her pocket. Darlene's voice burst out, clear for the first time all night. "Rachel, Ray is with me at the main panel. Do not trust anyone inside 7. The gate opened another inch. Ellie stood in the water between us and the exit, crying too hard to speak, while the unknown man behind the torn plastic reached farther through and said, in a voice that sounded almost kind, "The breaker S about to go. Move her now." The gate was open just wide enough to make cowards out of all of us. 2 inches, maybe 3. A slice of the hub showed beyond the bars. Gray floor, green exit sign, the edge of a bench. Safe things. Normal things. The kind of space where you could pretend this was a weird maintenance issue, and not a group of strangers pinned between rising water and a man who was not supposed to be there. Ellie stood between us and that gap, ankle deep in black water, shaking so hard the beam from Martin's flashlight trembled off her jacket. The torn plastic sheeting hung down the corridor to our right, about 20 yards away, separating the public portion of cell block 7 from the stabilization area. Behind it, the unknown man's gloved hand stayed out in the light, palm open, as if he were proving he had nothing in it. "Move her now," he said. "The temporary line S still live." Rachel had her radio clenched in one hand and her flashlight in the other. "Identify yourself." "No time." "Name." The man's hand withdrew a little. The plastic breathed in and out around the tier. "You don't know me." That was not the comforting answer he may have thought it was. His voice crackled from Rachel's radio again, thinner now. "Rachel, keep distance. Ray says main panel shows 7 gates cycling open. He didn't send it." Caleb said. "Someone is controlling the lock locally." Rachel looked at the keypad beside the gate. Green light. Open status. The gate had eased another inch, but the magnetic lock still held it mostly in place, like something inside the mechanism could not decide whether to release or refuse. Mia said, "Ellie first. We solve the rest after." That cut through everything. Rachel nodded. "Ellie, listen to Mia. Don't lift your feet. Shuffle toward Nathan's voice." Ellie made a small sound. "I can't." "You can," Mia said. "Small movements. Keep both feet on the floor. Don't reach for the book." "My feet are numb." "I know, that's okay. You're still standing." Martin's face had gone gray. "Let me take the pole." "No," Rachel said. "She's my daughter. And if you go down, she watches it happen." That shut him up, but it nearly broke him. He pressed one fist to his mouth, hard enough to leave his knuckles white. I held out the plastic barrier pole toward Ellie. It was light, flimsy, meant to hold a warning sign, not a 16-year-old's life. The far end wobbled over the water. "Ellie," I said, "2 hands. Don't pull, just touch it." She reached and caught it. For 1 second, I thought the plan might work. Then the gate motor jerked. The bars moved inward another few inches with a squeal so loud it made all of us flinch. Ellie, startled, yanked the pole, and my wet boot slipped off the raised concrete lip. My left foot went into the water. Cold shot up my leg. Mia grabbed the back of my jacket and hauled me against the wall. The pole clattered down between me and Ellie, splashing water over both of us. "Nathan," Mia snapped. "I'm fine." "Don't say that." A sharp sting opened along my left shin. I looked down and saw a dark slice in my jeans, where something under the water had cut me broken glass, rusted metal. A screw. I had no idea. Blood mixed with the water in a faint reddish thread that vanished almost instantly. "Out," Mia said. "Foot out now." I got it back onto the raised strip. My heart was hammering so hard I felt it in my teeth. First attempt failed. Ellie was still stranded, and now I had a cut leg, which was exactly the kind of small injury that becomes big in a place full of rust and filthy water. Mia crouched, ignoring my protest, and pressed the cuff of my jeans up with 2 fingers. "It's not deep." "Great. Tour includes triage." "Shut up," but her voice shook. Down the corridor, the man behind the plastic said, "Use the wooden planks. They're stacked by the west brace." Rachel swung her flashlight toward the torn sheeting. "How do you know that?" "I worked this block." "When?" No answer. Caleb whispered, "Could be a contractor." "Could be the person who made the card," Priya whispered back. Trevor said, "Why would a contractor make a creepy card?" Priya turned on him. "Why are you still asking questions like this is a podcast?" He looked down, ashamed. Rachel scanned the left wall where temporary braces had been installed. A stack of narrow plywood sheets rested under a sign that red floor access closed. They were on our side of the water, just beyond Lena and Caleb. Not planks exactly, more like construction sheets, but better than a plastic pole. "We can bridge from here to the gate threshold," Caleb said, "not to Ellie. Angle one sheet from the raised strip to the drier patch by the gate. Get someone close enough to reach her." "Someone light," Martin said immediately. "I'll go." "You are not light," Lena said. "I don't care." "I do," she said, surprising all of us with the force in it. "Because if that board tips, you take Ellie with you." Rachel pointed to Trevor. "You help Caleb slide one sheet over, slowly." Trevor obeyed without a joke. That scared me more than his jokes had. They dragged a plywood sheet along the raised strip. It scraped against the wall, sending dust down in a dry little shower. The sound traveled down the cell block and came back twisted. For a moment, it sounded like footsteps running on the tier above us. Ellie heard it and began sobbing harder. "Someone's up there." Rachel's flashlight snapped upward. Above the cells, the old catwalk was closed off behind rusted railings and safety netting. In the beam, something moved fast along the upper level, a pale shape between bars. Priya screamed. Trevor grabbed her. The pale thing swung down, hit the wall, and dangled there. Not a person. A strip of loose plastic wrap from the construction netting had torn free in the draft from the broken window above and was flapping against the railing, its end snapping like a hand slapping metal. Rachel kept the light on it until everyone saw. "Plastic," she said. "Just plastic." Nobody laughed with relief. Relief was too expensive now. Caleb and Trevor set the plywood sheet across the shallow water, one end on the raised strip, the other angled toward a drier mound near the gate frame. It bowed slightly in the middle. "Weight limit?" I asked. Caleb looked at me. "Unknown." "Love that," Rachel said. "I'll go." "No," Mia said at once. "You're our radio. She's my responsibility. You go down, we lose the person who knows the building." Rachel hated that. I could see it. Responsibility pulled at her from two sides. Mia stripped off her coat and handed it to me. "I'm lighter than most of you." "No," I said. She looked at me. "Do not start. You're not walking over standing water on scrap plywood." "Nathan," Mia, her eyes sharpened. "You don't get to control this because you're scared." The words landed in front of everyone. I felt my face heat even in the cold. She softened immediately, but not enough to take them back. "I know what I'm doing. You're a nurse, not a rescue worker. And right now, that puts me ahead of the YouTube guy with a bleeding leg." Caleb cleared his throat. "She should keep 3 points of contact. Use the wall, the board, and the pole." Lena handed Mia the plastic pole I had dropped, wiping the wet end on her sleeve first, as if that mattered. Mia stepped onto the plywood. It flexed with a damp groan. Martin whispered, "Please." Mia moved slowly, one foot placed flat, then the other, pole pressed into the shallowest part of the water for balance. The board dipped. Water lapped over its edges. She got halfway. Then the gate moved again. This time it opened wider, a full foot, then stopped with a metallic bang. The plywood shifted from the vibration. Mia dropped to one knee on it, catching herself with the pole. The board slid 2 inches toward the center of the corridor. "Mia," I shouted, "I'm okay." She was not okay. I could hear it in her breath. The man behind the plastic said, "Don't use the gate. It's drawing current through the frame." Caleb looked sharply at the bars. "What? That's why it's cycling." Rachel snapped, "Are you an electrician?" "No." "Then stop giving instructions. I've seen what happens here." "Where is here?" Lena asked. The The man's answer was swallowed by static from Rachel's radio. Darlene came through again. Rachel, main breaker for temp work, is locked behind the service cage. Facilities can't confirm shutoff. Ray says the panel's been accessed recently. Rachel pressed the radio button. By who? Unknown. Security log shows contractor badge entry at 11:43 p.m. Rachel looked toward the torn plastic. What contractor? Static. Darlene, nothing. New fact. Contractor badge at 11:43. Someone inside before us. Someone who knew the block well enough to talk about planks and current, but not willing to give a name. Mia reached the end of the plywood, close enough to Ellie now that they could touch fingertips. Ellie, Mia said, when I tell you, you're going to take my hand and shuffle onto the board. I can't. You can. Look at me. Ellie looked at her. Good. Not at the water. Not at the cable. At me. Mia extended her hand. Ellie reached. Their fingers touched. Then the overhead emergency bulb above the gate exploded. Not burned out. Exploded. Glass popped and sprayed down across the gate threshold. Darkness slammed into the hub side, leaving only Rachel's flashlight, Martin's flashlight, and the weak glow of Caleb's watch. Ellie screamed and lurched backward. Mia lunged for her. For one terrible second, both of them were off balance, the plywood sliding, the water rippling around the cable. Martin broke. He stepped fully into the water. Martin, no, Rachel shouted. He reached Ellie in 3 long strides and grabbed the back of her jacket. Nothing happened. No shock, no collapse, no blue flash. Just a father hauling his kid out of panic with raw, stupid love. Mia grabbed Ellie's arm. Together, they got her onto the plywood, then to the raised strip. Martin followed, soaked to mid-calf, breathing like he had run a mile. Second attempt, partial success. Ellie was out, but the gate area was now darker, glass-covered, and maybe energized. Mia's right palm was bleeding from where she had caught herself on a splintered edge of plywood. Martin's boots squelched. Ellie folded against him and cried into his jacket without trying to hide it anymore. I wanted to hug Mia. I wanted to yell at her. I wanted to apologize. The feelings jammed together until all I could do was say, your hand. She looked at it. Splinter, I'm fine. Don't say that, I said, and she gave me the smallest, tired smile because she heard herself in it. Rachel took one step toward the gate, then stopped. With the emergency bulb gone, the hub beyond looked less like rescue and more like another dark room. The green exit sign still glowed farther out, but weaker now, half obscured by bars. Caleb crouched and shone his phone screen toward the gate threshold. Glass everywhere, and the bottom of the gate is sitting in water. Lena said, can we open it wider without touching metal? Rachel aimed her flashlight at the keypad. The green indicator had started blinking. Maybe, Caleb said, but we don't know whether that frame is live, and if someone is cycling it remotely or from a local panel, it could move while people are passing through. Trevor whispered, so we can't leave. Nobody said that, Rachel said. You didn't have to. The unknown man behind the torn plastic pushed through farther. His shoulder appeared, then the side of his head. He wore a dark beanie, a work jacket, and safety glasses fogged white. His face was partly covered by a dust mask hanging loose under his chin. White male, maybe late 30s or 40s. Wet hair stuck at his temple. He looked frightened in a practical way, like a man who had already made one bad calculation and was now doing math faster than fear. Rachel raised her flashlight directly into his eyes. Stop there, he froze. Name, Evan. Last name, He hesitated. Rachel's voice hardened. Last name? Pike, Caleb said. Contractor. Evan Pike looked at the water at the gate. All of us arranged along the wall like people waiting for bad news. Restoration subcontractor. Electrical prep, mostly. Are you here after hours? Rachel asked. He wiped his mouth with the back of one glove. Because someone asked me to be. Who? I thought it was your operations manager. Rachel's face tightened. Darling, no, a man. Email said emergency sensor issue before tonight's tour. Paid extra. Rachel said, we don't bring contractors in during tour. I know that now. You made the card, Priya asked. Evan looked confused. What card? Nobody believed confusion anymore, even when it looked real. Rachel pulled the laminated rule card from her jacket and held it up. Evan stared at it. The beam caught sweat on his forehead despite the cold. No, he said. No, I saw one of those by the service cage. What service cage? Caleb asked. Evan pointed down past the torn plastic. End of 7. Left turn. Old utility alcove. There's a breaker box and a maintenance door to the exterior yard. Rachel shook her head. That door is alarmed and bolted. Not tonight. The corridor seemed to tilt around that sentence. A maintenance door to the exterior yard. Another way out. Also another way in. Mia wrapped her bleeding hand in a scarf Lena handed her. Can we use it? Rachel looked toward the gate, then toward the dark behind Evan. You could see the calculation. Wait at the gate with water rising and unreliable power, or move deeper into a closed construction zone with an unidentified contractor who might be lying. Darlene's radio voice returned in pieces. Rachel listened, do not service. Rachel pressed the button. Repeat, Darlene. Do not use, static swallowed the rest. Evan said, the service door opens to the east yard. From there, you can reach the staff lot. Rachel said, then why didn't you leave? He looked behind him. For the first time, I saw real fear overtake the practical kind. Because somebody shut the cage after I came through. Caleb said, somebody. Evan nodded once. And I don't think it was security. A heavy clank came from the hub side of the gate. All of us turned. The gate, which had been cracked open, began sliding shut. Slowly, smoothly. No, Rachel said. Caleb jumped toward the keypad, then stopped short of the water and metal frame. Can we wedge it? With what? Lena asked. Plywood. The plywood is in the water, Mia said. The gap narrowed from a foot to 6 inches. Trevor grabbed the plastic barrier pole and shoved it toward the opening. Rachel knocked it away before it touched the bars. It could be live. The gate closed with a final magnetic thud. The green light turned red. The hub was gone again. Then the keypad screen went dark. No red, no green, no beep, just dead. For a moment, nobody spoke. The retreat route had not merely failed. It had erased itself. Water continued spreading along the center channel of the corridor. It had reached the low cells on the right now, lapping over thresholds, carrying Ellie's ruined paperback, until it bumped against the gate and opened to a page no one could read. The air smelled sharper, metallic, mixed with wet plaster and something hot, like insulation warming behind a wall. Rachel's radio gave one last burst. Darlene said, Rachel, if you can hear me, get them out of 7. Main system is down. We're calling police and fire. Then nothing. Rachel tried to answer. The radio clicked uselessly. Mia looked at me. Her face was pale. She was still holding her injured hand against her chest. I wanted to say I was sorry, for before, for always, for thinking control and care were the same thing. Rachel looked at Evan Pike. "Show me the service door," she said. Martin lifted Ellie into his arms, though she was too big for it, and he was already exhausted. Caleb helped Lena step over the plywood. Priya took Trevor's phone from his shaking hand and shoved it into his pocket, like she couldn't bear to watch him keep trying a dead screen. We turned away from the locked gate. That was the point where the tour ended, even if the building would not admit it. Ahead of us, beyond the torn plastic, cell block 7 narrowed into a construction corridor with temporary braces, hanging sheets, exposed cable, and the promised left turn toward a service cage none of us had seen. Behind us was the sealed gate, the dark hub, and the exit sign glowing on the wrong side of iron. Rachel stepped through the ripped plastic first. One by one, we followed her deeper into the closed part of the prison, because the only way out had become the way the wrong rule card had warned us not to go. The closed part of cell block 7 was not built for tour. It was not even built for fear, really. Fear gives places too much credit. This part was built for labor, for ladders and conduit and half-finished work orders, for men in boots dragging plywood through old cells while the museum stayed open just enough to pay its bills. Past the torn plastic, the corridor narrowed and bent, left around a row of covered cells. Temporary braces leaned against the walls like crutches. Yellow extension cords hung from hooks. A roll of insulation had split open beside a pallet of mortar bags, and the damp air carried that hot electrical smell stronger now, sharp enough to sting the back of my nose. Evan Pike moved ahead of Rachel with both hands visible. "Slow," Rachel told him. "I'm going slow." "Slower," he obeyed. Martin carried Ellie for 15 yards before his knees started to buckle. Lena and Priya helped him set her down on the driest part of the walkway. Ellie could stand, but barely. Her socks squelched inside her shoes. She kept whispering, "I'm sorry," until Priya finally said, "Stop apologizing. You're alive. That's the job." Trevor had stopped filming. He looked younger without the phone between him and the world. Caleb walked near the wall, watching cable runs, junction boxes, anything that looked like it could kill us. Mia stayed beside me, her scarf wrapped around her bleeding hand, her face tight each time she flexed her fingers. "You okay?" I asked. "No." The answer startled me. She glanced at me. "What? You wanted honesty." I almost laughed. It came out like a cough. We reached the left turn Evan had mentioned. The corridor opened into a low-utility alcove screened by a chain-link cage. Behind the mesh sat a breaker panel, a metal desk, stacked toolboxes, 2 orange cones, and a gray steel door with an exit sign above it that wasn't lit. A service door. Real, ordinary, beautiful. Then we saw the padlock on the cage. Cut. It lay on the floor, its shackle sheared clean through. Rachel's flashlight dipped to it. "That's not ours." Caleb crouched without touching it. "Bolt cutters," Evan said. "It was locked when I came in." Rachel turned on him. "Then how did you get through? The door was open. The cage was. That makes no sense." "I know," Mia pointed. "What's that?" On the metal desk, under a clipboard, sat another laminated card. Rachel didn't pick it up. Caleb shone his phone screen over it. "Midnight Tour rules, service cage. Do not unlock the cage if the group count is wrong. Do not answer anyone calling from cell 7B if water reaches the service cage. Use the exterior door immediately. If the exterior door is chained, return to the gate. If both exits fail, wait in the center cell until morning. The safest person is the one holding the keys. Trevor whispered, "That last one is messed up." Rachel looked at the keys clipped to her belt. So did everyone else. For half a second, the card did exactly what it was meant to do. It put a spotlight on her, made her authority look like possession, made help look like danger. "That's why they're making cards," Caleb said quietly. "Not to guide us, to make us fight." "Who is they?" Martin asked. No one answered. A sound came from behind us. A scrape. We turned as one. At the far end of the construction corridor, back toward the torn plastic, a figure stepped into the weak spill of Martin's flashlight. Dark jacket, hood up, face hidden behind a white dust mask. For one insane heartbeat, I thought there were two Evans. Then Evan Pike said, "That's him." The masked man held something in his right hand. Bolt cutters. Rachel raised her radio like it was a weapon, then seemed to remember it was dead. "Stop there," she called. The man did not stop. He walked toward us with a steady, unhurried pace, boots splashing lightly through the water spreading behind him. Caleb grabbed one of the orange cones from beside the cage. Ridiculous weapon. Better than hands. Martin pushed Ellie behind him. Mia stepped in front of Trevor and Priya without thinking, and I reached for Rachel's keys. Not to steal them, not exactly. I told myself I was helping. I saw the service door, the cage, the cut padlock, the breaker panel. I saw a problem and turned into the worst version of myself. Rachel caught my wrist. "Don't," she said. "I can open the door." "You don't know which key?" "Then give them to Evan." Evan laughed once, sharp and humorless. "Don't give me anything." The masked man was closer now, 30 feet. Rachel pulled the keys free and shoved them into Mia's injured hand. Mia winced. "Why me?" she asked. "Because you won't play hero," Rachel said. That hurt more than it should have, because she was right. The masked man stopped 10 feet from us. Close enough that I could see his dust mask had museum logo stickers stuck over the filters. Close enough to see a strip of duct tape wrapped around one sleeve, dark with water. "Keys," he said. His voice was muffled. "Male, American, middle-aged maybe." Rachel said, "Police are already on their way. Then you should hurry." He lifted the bolt cutters, not swinging them, just showing us the weight. Priya's voice shook. "Why are you doing this?" The man looked at her, then at Trevor, then at Ellie, and something like irritation passed through his posture. "Because nobody listens until there's a liability event." Rachel stared. "You're insane." "No," he said. "I worked here 13 years. I wrote reports about that wing. Water, wiring, bad locks, night programming with half staff. They fired me when I wouldn't sign off." Evan whispered, "Tom." Rachel's flashlight jumped. Tom Braddock. The name meant something to her. Tom tilted his head. "Good, you remember." Rachel's face went hard and pale. "You cut the lock. I showed what could happen. You trapped guests in a flooded cell block. I triggered a controlled leak." Mia snapped. A child was standing in it. That hit him, not enough, but it hit. She wasn't supposed to leave the wall. I heard Martin inhale. The sound was terrible. He lunged. Tom swung the bolt cutters up defensively. Martin ran into them shoulder first with a meaty crack and went down hard on one knee. Ellie screamed. Lena grabbed Martin under the arms and dragged him back. Blood started at his eyebrow where he had clipped the cage on the way down. No clean hero moment. No satisfying punch. Just pain and panic. Tom backed up 2 steps, breathing harder. "Keys," he said again. Mia held them tight despite her bleeding palm. Nathan the fixer rose in me one last time. The idiot commander. The boy who thought if he gave enough orders, nothing bad would happen. Then I looked at Mia's hand, at Ellie shaking, at Martin bleeding, Rachel, who knew the building but could not solve a man. And I did the thing I hated most. I listened. Caleb whispered, "The cage door isn't locked." He was right. The padlock had been cut. The chain hung loose through the latch, more theater than security. Rachel's eyes flicked there. Tom saw it too. He moved. So did we. Rachel kicked the chain free and yanked the cage door open. Caleb threw the orange cone at Tom's legs. It bounced uselessly, but Tom stepped around it, and that half step mattered. Inside, Rachel shouted. Everyone surged into the cage. Lena first with Ellie, Priya and Trevor. Martin stumbling, one hand over his brow. Evan, Mia, me. Tom reached the cage as Rachel tried to slam it shut. The bolt cutters jammed between door and frame. Metal clanged. Tom shoved. Rachel shoved back. I grabbed the mesh with both hands and pushed. Caleb joined me. Trevor too, crying openly now, his face wet and twisted. Evan grabbed a loose length of chain from the latch and looped it around the frame. Tom thrust one arm through the gap and caught Rachel's jacket. She gasped as he yanked her forward, her shoulders striking the frame. Mia stepped in, not dramatically, not gracefully. She drove the sharp end of a broken plastic barrier pole into Tom's forearm. He screamed and let go. Rachel slammed the cage door shut. Evan whipped the chain through once, twice. Then Caleb jammed the cut padlock shackle through the links like a pin. It would not hold long, but it held. Tom struck the mesh with the bolt cutters. Once, twice. Every hit shook dust from the ceiling. Rachel bent over, holding her shoulder. "Breaker," she said. Caleb was already at the panel. "I don't know this layout." Evan shoved beside him. "I do." Rachel grabbed his sleeve. "Can we trust you?" "No," Evan said. "But I'm what you've got." He opened the panel. Inside were labeled breakers, some handwritten, some printed, some so old the marker had faded into gray ghosts. Tom hit the cage again. The makeshift chain slipped half an inch. Evan scanned the panel. His fingers hovered. "Temporary run, east alcove, gate ox, work light. Kill anything feeding 7, Caleb said. "If I kill the wrong thing, we may lose the door release." "The door's mechanical," Rachel said. "Old crash bar." Evan flipped 2 breakers. The hot smell faded slightly. The corridor dropped into deeper darkness, except for flashlights and phone screens. Tom stopped hitting the cage. For a second, that was worse. Then he said very calmly, "If you open that exterior door, alarm locks the yard gate. You'll be stuck outside until police arrive." Rachel said, "Better than in here with you." Tom laughed softly. "You still don't understand the building." He stepped away from the cage, toward the service door. Mia lifted the keys. "Which one?" Rachel pointed with her good arm. "Square brass." "No, smaller. The one with blue paint." Mia fumbled. Her injured hand shook. Blood darkened the scarf. "Hurry," Priya said. "I am." Tom was at the door now, outside the cage, but between us and the exit. He reached into his pocket. Caleb said, "He has something." Tom pulled out a chain, not a weapon, a chain with a heavy lock on it. He began threading it through the exterior door's push bar. Rachel made a sound like all the air had been kicked out of her. "He's chaining it." That was the point where thinking stopped. I grabbed the loose metal desk inside the cage and shoved it toward the mesh. "Help me." Caleb understood first. So did Evan. Together, we tipped the desk onto its side and rammed it into the cage wall. The mesh flexed but held. Again. Tom looked back. Again. The bottom corner of the chain link panel tore from its rusted floor bracket with a screech. Not enough for a person. Enough for an arm. Mia dropped to her knees and thrust the key ring through the opening toward Rachel. "Can you reach the lock?" Rachel stared at her. "My shoulder, I'll guide it." "No," I said, "I will." Mia looked at me, waiting for the old Nathan to insist. I took the keys from her, then put them into her better hand and closed her fingers around them. "You guide it," I said. "I'll hold the mesh." Her face changed, just a flicker. Then she lay flat on the wet concrete inside the cage, reaching under the bent mesh with the blue painted key pinched between two fingers. Tom saw. He abandoned the chain and came at her. Rachel moved first. Injured shoulder and all, she threw herself into Tom's knees from the side. He went down with a shout, bolt cutters skidding away. His head hit the concrete hard enough to make a flat, awful sound. Rachel cried out and rolled away, clutching her shoulder. Tom groaned, dazed but moving. "Mia," I shouted, "I have it." The key entered the service door lock. Turned, nothing. "Other way," Rachel shouted. Mia twisted. The lock clicked. Tom crawled toward the bolt cutters. Martin, blood running down his cheek, kicked them away. He nearly fell doing it. Evan grabbed the service door's push bar through the bent mesh and shoved. The door opened. Cold outside air rushed in, wet and clean and smelling of the city. For half a second, nobody moved because it was too simple. A door opening. Air. Rain. Then Tom got to his feet. He grabbed Rachel by the back of her jacket and dragged her toward the open door, not to help her out, but to use her as a shield. "Back," he said. His dust mask had slipped. He was older than I expected. Late 50s. Red-faced, eyes glassy with panic and conviction. The worst combination. "Tom," Rachel said through clenched teeth. "It's over." "No," he said. "It's documented now." "Let her go," Mia said. He tightened his grip. And Ellie, who had been shaking behind Lena, picked up her ruined paperback from where it had somehow been carried in with us, wet, swollen, useless, and threw it at his face. It slapped against his eyes with a wet smack. Not heroic. Not enough to hurt him. Enough. Rachel dropped her weight, twisting out of his grip. I shoved the bent cage panel outward with everything I had. The torn mesh caught Tom across the hip. Caleb and Evan hit the door from inside. Martin grabbed Rachel with his good arm and hauled her through the opening. Tom stumbled backward into the water pooled outside the cage. His heel caught the extension cord. He fell, hard. His head missed the wall by inches, but his wrist landed under him with a crack that made even Mia flinch. He screamed, high and raw. The bolt cutters lay out of reach. For 3 seconds, no one moved. Then Rachel, half collapsed outside the service door, pointed at Tom and shouted, "Leave him, move." We moved. Through the service door. Into rain. Into the east yard of the prison, a narrow fenced utility space between stone walls and a locked vehicle gate. Not freedom. Not yet. But air. Real air. Behind us, Tom Braddock curled on the wet concrete, clutching his broken wrist and sobbing curses that turned into coughs. Evan slammed the service door from the outside. Rachel locked it with shaking hands. The group gathered in the yard under a security light that flickered but stayed on. Mia leaned against the wall, gray with pain. Martin sank to the ground with Ellie wrapped in both arms. Trevor threw up beside a dumpster. Priya held his shoulders. Lena kept saying Caleb's name softly, though he was right there. Rachel slid down the door and finally let herself make a sound, a short, broken gasp that was almost a sob. Sirens grew somewhere beyond the walls, not close enough to save us from what had already happened. close enough to prove the world outside still existed. I stood in the rain with blood running cold down my shin, watching the locked service door shake once from Tom's good hand on the other side. Once, then again. Then it stopped. The conflict was over in the practical sense. The man was trapped. The door was locked. Police were coming. We had survived the rules because they had never been rules at all. They were instructions designed to make frightened people doubt the safest person in the room, split apart, and walk exactly where Tom Braddock needed them to go. But as the sirens approached, and Mia rested her head against my shoulder without looking at me, I kept seeing the last line from the card. The safest person is the one holding the keys. Rachel had given them away. That was why we lived. The first firefighter through the East Yard gate looked angry before he looked relieved. Not angry at us, exactly. Angry at the lock on the gate, at the narrow yard, at the stupid old stone walls funneling rainwater toward a drain clogged with leaves and cigarette butts, at a museum that had decided people would pay extra to walk through a building after midnight if you gave the danger a name tag and a waiver. "Who's hurt?" he shouted. For a second, nobody answered. It should have been easy. We were wet, bleeding, shaking, gathered under security light beside a dumpster that smelled like damp cardboard and old coffee grounds. Rachel was sitting on the ground with one arm tucked tight against her body. Martin had blood drying along his eyebrow. Mia's hand was wrapped in Lena's scarf, the fabric dark in the middle. My shin throbbed with every pulse. Trevor had vomit on his shoes. Ellie was wrapped around her father's arm like she might float away if she let go. But after an hour of trying not to be the most frightened person in the room, saying "I'm hurt" felt strangely impossible. Mia broke first, because of course she did. "Possible shoulder dislocation," she said, pointing at Rachel. "Head laceration on him. Hand puncture on me. Lower leg cut on my brother. Teenager was in standing water, cold exposure, panic response, maybe shock. And the man inside has a broken wrist, maybe head injury. He attacked us." The firefighter stared at her for half a beat, then nodded. "You medical, nurse, good, keep talking." That almost made me laugh. Mia looked offended by being useful. They moved fast after that. 2 firefighters came in with bolt cutters for the yard gate chain, even though someone had already unlocked it from the outside. A paramedic crouched in front of Rachel, asked her name, asked the date, asked where she was. Rachel answered all 3, then tried to stand. "Ma'am, stay seated. I need to tell them there's a man behind that door. We know. He has bolt cutters. We know. He staged it. The water, the gate, the cards." The paramedic looked at her gently. "Police are on the door." Rachel turned her face away then, not crying exactly, but letting the muscles go slack after holding them tight for too long. I remember the rain collecting along the edge of her jaw before it fell. 2 officers came through next, hands on their holsters, careful rather than theatrical. They spoke to Rachel first, then Evan, then Caleb, then everyone at once, until they realized group questions were useless, because all of us were answering different parts of the same nightmare. Behind the service door, Tom Braddock shouted twice. The first time it was words, something about documentation and negligence. The second time it was just pain. When the officers opened the door, he did not rush them. That mattered to me later. The climax in my head had made him bigger than a person. By then, with 2 police flashlights on him and a firefighter stepping over the threshold with medical gloves, he was just a wet, middle-aged man sitting on the concrete with one wrist swollen wrong and his dust mask hanging from one ear. He looked furious. He also looked exhausted. They cuffed him in front because of the injury. He complained about it. Then he asked if anyone had checked the breaker logs. Nobody answered. The world became procedure. That was the first strange comfort of the aftermath. Procedure had failed us inside, but outside it returned in layers. Blankets, names, times, vitals, photographs of injuries, radios that worked, flashlights that did not flicker for dramatic effect, a fire captain asking Rachel where the electrical panels were, a police sergeant telling another officer to preserve the laminated cards as evidence, Darlene arriving from the main building in a raincoat over pajama pants, her face bare and stunned, repeating, "I told him no night events in 7, to no one in particular." We were guided one by one through a side service path, past a row of dumpsters and a maintenance cart, then into a staff break room that smelled of burnt microwave popcorn. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Someone had left a Phillies mug in the sink. There was a vending machine against one wall and a laminated poster about workplace harassment taped beside the refrigerator. It was so ordinary I wanted to sit down on the floor. Instead, I let a paramedic clean the cut on my shin. He was a broad man with a shaved head and a small tattoo behind one ear. His name was Lewis, 38, male, and he had the calm boredom of someone who had seen every possible way a person could turn a manageable night into paperwork. "You're lucky," he said. "I'm getting tired of that word." He glanced up. "Fair, you're not badly cut, better, technically." He washed the wound with saline. It burned enough to make me grip the edge of the chair. Mia, sitting across from me while another medic worked on her palm, noticed. "Breathe. I am breathing. You're holding it. I'm savoring the moment." She rolled her eyes, but there was no bite in it. Her hand looked ugly under the light, swollen around 2 deep splinter punctures. They had already said she would need an X-ray to make sure no wood stayed inside. She had nodded like the patient was someone else. Rachel sat at the break room table with her jacket cut open at the shoulder. The paramedics had not dislocated it exactly, but she had strained something badly when Tom yanked her into the cage frame. Every time she moved, her mouth flattened. Darlene tried to apologize to her 3 different times. Rachel stopped her each time. "Not here," she said. Not because forgiveness was coming, because there were officers in the room and lawyers would follow. Martin got 3 butterfly strips over his eyebrow. Ellie sat beside him under a gray blanket, holding a paper cup of water in both hands. She had stopped crying, which somehow made her look worse. When a female officer named Judith Park, 51, asked if she could take Ellie's statement, Martin's whole body tightened. Ellie said, "It's okay, Dad." He looked down at her like he had forgotten she could speak for herself. "It's okay," she said again, quieter. So Officer Park pulled a chair close and spoke to her softly, not pushing, not asking why she had gone after the book, not making her feel foolish for the one decision that nearly ruined all of us. Ellie answered in small sentences. When she got to the part where she threw the book, Trevor made a sound that was almost a laugh and almost a sob. "That was honestly the best throw I've ever seen," he said. Priya smacked his arm, but gently. Ellie looked at him for a second. Then, unbelievably, she smiled. Only a little. It was gone almost immediately. Caleb gave his statement with unnerving precision. times, observations, sensor status, possible system access, the gate cycling, the keypad indicator, the contractor badge entry at 11:43. He drew a rough map on the back of a break room safety checklist, labeling the gate, water flow, service cage, breaker panel, and exterior yard. Lena sat beside him with one hand on his knee, grounding him when he started talking too fast. Evan Pike was kept apart from us near the hallway. Not arrested, not free either. He had surrendered his phone, his badge, and the email that had brought him there. I saw one officer scrolling through it with another officer over his shoulder. Evan looked smaller without the fogged safety glasses and work gloves. He kept flexing his hands, as if expecting someone to tell him what tool to pick up. At one point, he caught Rachel's eye. "I didn't know," he said. Rachel stared at him for a long moment. "You came into an active museum site after hours without confirming with staff." His face reddened. The email looked real. You wanted the overtime. He did not deny it. That was one of the quieter wounds of the night. No villain speech, no dramatic betrayal. Just a man making a normal bad choice because money was tight, because the message sounded official enough, because he had worked dangerous sites before, and danger had become background noise. Tom Braddock had built the trap, but ordinary carelessness had held the door open for him. The police found more in cell block 7 before dawn. We learned pieces of it slowly, mostly because everyone in the break room kept talking, and trauma makes people greedy for facts. Tom had used an old employee credential that should have been disabled. He had printed the rule cards on museum stock left in a storage office. He had set the water flow by opening a capped line connected to an old boiler feed system, not enough to flood the block quickly, just enough to create urgency. He had tampered with the gate sensor so the control system would report open while the maglock stayed engaged. He had staged the contractor call to get Evan inside and make the service area seem like a plausible escape. He had not planned for Ellie to step into the water. At least that was what he told police. Nobody believed that in a way that mattered. The cards bothered investigators most because they were not necessary for the mechanical parts of the trap. They were for us. They turned the building into an argument. Keep 10 feet apart. Stay close. Trust the guide. Don't trust the guide. Count the group. Fear extra guests. Hold the keys. Fear the keys. Tom had understood something about frightened people. That stayed with me. Around 3:10 a.m., after we had given statements and refused coffee that tasted like scorched paper, they let us leave for the hospital or home, depending on injury. Mia needed urgent care for her hand. Rachel was going to the ER for her shoulder. Martin insisted Ellie be checked too, and for once, she did not pretend to be annoyed by him. Outside, the rain had thinned to mist. Fairmount Avenue looked almost gentle under the streetlights. A rideshare idled at the curb with its hazard lights blinking. A jogger passed on the opposite sidewalk, hood up, earbuds in, not even slowing down. Philadelphia had already moved on. Mia and I stood near the curb while a paramedic handed her discharge notes and told her to keep the temporary dressing dry. "Good luck with that," she said, looking up at the weather. He smiled tiredly and left. For a minute, neither of us spoke. The prison wall loomed behind us, dark stone slick with rain. In daylight, it would be educational again. A landmark, a place on a field trip permission slip. At night, it had become something else, not because of ghosts or old prisoners or anything easy like that, but because people had trusted systems that looked official from a distance. Mia leaned against my arm. "You did okay," she said. I looked at her bandaged hand. "I almost made it worse." "Yeah." I waited. She looked up at me. "And then you didn't." That was as much forgiveness as either of us could manage at 3 a.m. with wet socks and dried blood on our clothes. "I don't want you to move," I said. Her expression softened, but she did not rescue me from the honesty. "I know. I'm happy for you. I just don't want it." "I know that too." Cars hissed over wet pavement. "I'm sorry I made it about control," I said. She nudged me with her shoulder. "You always make it about control. I'm trying to have a moment here." "I'm helping by being accurate," I laughed then. Really laughed once, short and cracked. She did too, and for a second we were just siblings outside a stupid tourist attraction after a terrible night, laughing because the alternative was to fold in half. Then her phone buzzed. We both stared at it. It had been dead for hours. The screen lit in her good hand with a low battery warning. 1%. No service, then 1 bar, then no service again. "Probably just warmed up," she said. "Yeah." She unlocked it. Missed calls from Mom. Texts from Darlene's temporary incident line. A weather alert. Nothing strange. Then my own phone vibrated in my pocket. I did not move at first. Mia looked at me. "Nate." I took it out. The screen showed the dead battery symbol, then flickered to life at 2%. Old phone. Cold night. Water in the air. Any technician could have explained it in a tone that made me feel stupid. There was one notification from the unknown number. No message preview this time. Just 12:17 a.m. I opened it. The thread was empty. No rules have changed. No sender history. No text at all. Only a blank conversation screen and the number at the top, which disappeared before I thought to screenshot it. Mia watched my face. "What?" I told her. She did not laugh. She did not tell me phones glitch. She did not tell me I was tired, though I was. She just said, "Don't put that in your video." "I'm not making a video." The answer came too fast. She looked at the prison wall. "Good." We went to urgent care. Mia got 3 tiny splinters removed and a tetanus booster. I got my shin cleaned properly and taped. Martin texted the group later through a temporary contact chain Lena organized from the break room. Ellie was physically fine. Rachel had a bad shoulder sprain, but no fracture. Caleb wrote a timeline for police before sunrise, because of course he did. Trevor posted nothing. Priya made sure of it. The museum closed for investigations. Tom Braddock was charged with assault, reckless endangerment, unlawful restraint, burglary, and a list of other things that looked sterile on paper compared to what it had felt like to be inside his plan. The local news called it a frightening after-hours incident. One article used the word hoax, which made me so angry I had to stop reading. Mia moved to Maine 9 days later. I helped load her boxes. Neither of us mentioned the prison until we found her ruined green scarf in the trunk of my car, stiff from dried blood and plaster dust. She told me to throw it out. I didn't. For a while, ordinary life returned in pieces. Coffee, emails, rent, bad sleep, sirens in the distance that were not coming for me. I stopped filming abandoned buildings. Not officially. I just kept not going. I edited cooking videos for a restaurant group and told people I was broadening my portfolio. Sometimes, when my apartment radiator ticks at 2 a.m, I hear the prison pipes instead. Sometimes, I wake convinced I am standing in a line of strangers, waiting for someone else to decide which rule is real. And once, 2 months after Mia left, I received a padded envelope with no return address. Inside was a laminated card, water warped at one corner, smelling faintly of dust and rain. Not one of the rule cards, a museum visitor badge, printed with my name, NATHANROURKE, Midnight Group under the name, was a small black square where a QR code should have been. I never scanned it. I never took it to the police either, which I know was stupid. Maybe cowardly. I put it in a shoebox with hospital paperwork, Mia's stained scarf, and the receipt from the urgent care clinic. The prison reopened 6 months later for daytime tour only. Their website says the midnight program has been permanently discontinued. I believe that, mostly. But every now and then, when I check the page, the old booking calendar appears for half a second before the site finishes loading. A gray box at the bottom. No dates available. No description. Just one line, small enough that I keep telling myself it is cached text from a broken template. RULES updated after midnight. That's tonight's story. If it gives you chills, make sure to subscribe to Mia Horror Stories, and tap the bell so you never miss what's coming next. And if you're still brave enough, there are more dark tales waiting for you right here on the channel. Go watch another, if you dare. Hey everyone, this is Mia Horror Stories, and the title of today's horror story is Working the Midnight Shift at a Bowling Alley. The pins reset themselves. For your comfort, the screen will stay black throughout the video, so you can relax without strain and just focus on the story. Make sure you stick around until the end. Sometimes the last few moments are the ones that stay with you the longest. The first thing wrong with Lane 8 was the sound, not the crash of pins. We were used to that. Even after closing, the building kept knocking and clacking to itself, like it was dreaming about league night. Pin setters cycled if you looked at them funny. Balls thumped around in the returns. The soda machine hiccuped. The ice maker dumped a tray hard enough to make you flinch if you were carrying hot mop water past the snack bar. But Lane 8 made one neat, careful click. Then another. 10 plastic-coated pins stood back up at the end of the lane, arranged in their perfect white triangle under the dull yellow glow, without a ball going down, without the sweep bar dropping, without any of us touching the scoring console. I stood behind the foul line with a spray bottle in one hand and a rag in the other, watching the pins settle into place. "Okay," Tasha said from the counter behind me. "That's not supposed to happen. My name is Eddie Warren. I was 26 then, male, and I had been working nights at Lakeview Lanes in Erie, Pennsylvania, long enough to know the building's bad habits by ear. Lakeview sat on West 12th Street, not far from the tracks and the warehouses, in that flat part of town where the lake wind could find any crack in your jacket. It was a squat brick place with a faded sign, a parking lot full of old pothole patches, and a roof that made the owner sigh every time it rained. I worked the midnight shift because it paid a little more, because daytime interviews had not been kind to me, and because sleeping through the morning felt better than explaining to people why I was back in Erie after almost making it out. Tasha Monroe, 31, female, was the shift lead that night, 5'2" in worn black sneakers, with a silver nose ring and a ponytail so tight it seemed like it was helping her think. She had 2 kids at home with her mother, and a way of talking that made you feel she had already decided which parts of your story were nonsense. She was counting the register when lane 8 clicked, her lips moving silently over the drawer totals, because Tasha trusted math more than she trusted people. Behind her, the fluorescent lights over the snack bar buzzed like trapped flies. "Maybe it's on test mode," I said. I said it too quickly, because I liked having explanations ready. It was one of my bad habits. If I could name a problem, categorize it, put it in a drawer, it became less personal. That worked fine with jammed ball returns and shorted out scoring tablets. It worked less well with rent notices, voicemails from my father, and the little blank spots I sometimes had when people asked where I saw myself in 5 years. Tasha looked at the console for lane 8. Test mode doesn't set pins by itself after we shut down scoring. It can if somebody left the machine on back there. Somebody being you, could be me. It was you, could be spiritually me. She snorted, but she did not smile all the way. At the far end of the building, the pins gave another faint plastic tick, one against another, as if they had shifted their weight. Lakeview Lanes had 24 lanes, all wood synthetic overlay, with teal gutters and scoring monitors old enough to have that fat-backed look from the early 2000s. Half the screens had dark corners. Lane 16 showed everything with a green tint. Lane 3 sometimes called everyone Player A, no matter what name you typed in. The carpets were patterned in purple and blue swirls designed, I think, to hide nacho cheese, beer, and small childhood disasters. After midnight, with the birthday parties gone, and the league bowlers finished complaining about oil patterns, the place smelled like lane conditioner, fryer grease, disinfectant, and damp rental shoes. It was a gross smell, honestly. It was also familiar. I had been dragging the mop bucket out from the utility closet when it happened. The front doors were locked. The neon beer signs were off. The jukebox had stopped on its own after playing 2/3 of an old Journey song, leaving the last note hanging in my head in a way that irritated me more than scared me. Outside, a pickup rolled by on 12th, tires hissing on wet pavement. Inside, the only people left were me, Tasha, and Mark Feld. Mark Feld, 44, male, was our mechanic, though he preferred equipment manager because he said mechanic made people think he fixed motorcycles. He had a thick gray beard, a Milwaukee hoodie with a burn hole on the sleeve, and knees that cracked every time he crouched. Mark had been in the back pit area most of the night, fighting with Lane 14's distributor, which kept dropping pins sideways like it had a grudge. He did not like customers, did not like managers, and did not like anyone touching the machines unless they had first demonstrated basic respect for moving parts, which apparently included not breathing too close to them. A metal door opened behind the lanes. Mark's voice came from the back, muffled by distance and machinery. "Who turned 8 back on?" Tasha leaned sideways and called down the approach. "Nobody. You sure?" "No, Mark. I'm lying for the thrill." A pause. His boots sounded on the narrow service walkway behind the pin decks. There was always something strange about hearing a person move back there, but not seeing them. The machines hid people. You heard a shoe scrape, a tool drop, a curse swallowed by belts and motors, and then a head would pop up between lanes like somebody surfacing from a pond. Mark appeared behind Lane 8's pinsetter, his face half lit by the work light clipped to the machine housing. He had safety glasses pushed up onto his forehead. His right hand was wrapped in a dirty white towel. "Eddie," he said. "Yeah, you cycle this. No, you touch the chassis. No, you bored enough to play Ghost Boy with me. I'm bored enough to steal fries out of the warmer. I'm not bored enough to die in a pin setter." Good answer. He disappeared again. Tasha stepped away from the register and came down onto the approach, her shoes squeaking lightly. He cut his hand again. Probably. His wife is going to put him in a home. His wife divorced him. Exactly. The humor sat between us for about half a second. Then lane 8 clicked again. This time the sweep bar dropped. It came down slow, not fast like during a normal cycle. A black metal arm descended in front of the pin deck with a soft mechanical groan, stopped 2 inches above the lane, twitched, then rose back into its resting position. The pins remained standing. Tasha and I both took 1 step back from the foul line. Not far, just enough to admit we had bodies. From behind the machine, Mark said, "Cut power to 8. "I thought the back breaker was yours," Tasha called. "Desk override first, then I'll kill it here." I walked to the scoring console mounted between lanes 7 and 8. The plastic buttons were tacky from years of soda and hand lotion. I tapped the power menu. The monitor above the lane was dark, except for the faint ghost reflection of the pin deck. No active game. No open tab. No cosmic bowling animation. Nothing. The console gave me a little error chirp. I tried again. Same chirp. Tasha stood beside me, arms crossed tight. What's it saying? Nothing, just yelling. Move. She leaned over and did the exact same thing I had done, harder, because Tasha believed most objects responded to disappointment if you applied it firmly enough. The console chirped again. "Great," she said. "It's possessed by a calculator." "Probably a relay," I said. "Please don't start listing parts you learned from Mark last week." "I know 2 parts now, relay and solenoid. Proud of you." Mark slammed something in the back. "Desk, kill it." "No," Tasha said. "Then don't touch nothing." That was when the ball return on lane 8 coughed. The sound came from the little black mouth halfway down the approach, the one shared with lane 7. A rubber belt turned somewhere underneath us, low and dragging. Then a bowling ball rolled up from the return track and bumped into the stopper. It was green, not bright green. That old house ball green, scuffed cloudy from years of thumb holes, finger grease, and being dropped by kids who thought 12 pounds meant light. It rocked once in the cradle and stopped. I knew that ball. Not personally. I mean, it was a bowling alley. We had a lot of ugly house balls, but I had put that exact green 10-pounder away 20 minutes before because there was a chip near the thumb hole, and a league guy named Ron had complained that it grabbed meat. I had carried it to the rack by the rental counter, not into the lane 8 return. Tasha looked toward the ball racks near the front. The space where the green ball had been was empty. "Could have been in the track," I said. Tasha gave me a sideways look. "Could have been. Maybe somebody bowled it earlier and it got stuck." "Eddie." "Yeah." "You put it away." "I know. From lane 2. I know." She did not say anything after that, which made it worse. Lakeview was the kind of place where everything was connected under the floor if you asked Mark, and nothing was connected under the floor if you asked the owner. The ball returns ran in channels and lifts between pairs of lanes, and sometimes balls took forever to come back if the belts were worn. But lane 2 and lane 8 did not share a return. Even I knew that. Lane 2 returned with lane 1. Lane 8 returned with lane 7. There was no honest path from one cradle to the other, unless a person carried the ball. The front door rattled. All three of us turned. A woman stood outside under the overhang, one hand shielding her eyes as she peered through the glass. She wore a denim jacket over a hoodie, hair tucked under a knit cap, phone pressed to her chest. The parking lot lights painted her face gray and flat. A small silver sedan idled behind her with its hazards blinking. Tasha exhaled sharply. "We're closed." The woman knocked anyway. Tasha muttered something under her breath and walked to the door. I followed, partly because I was nosy and partly because I liked having someone between me and lane 8 for a minute. When Tasha unlocked the door and opened it 2 inches on the chain, cold air slid across the carpet. "We're closed," she said, not unkindly, but not inviting trouble either. "No, I'm sorry," the woman said. "I'm really sorry. My brother left his wallet here. He said he was on lane 8, blue wallet. He needs his ID for work in the morning." Tasha's eyes moved to me. The woman looked exhausted in that particular way night shift people recognize in each other. Shoulders up around the ears, mascara rubbed at one corner, patience held together with tape. Tasha said, "What's your brother's name?" Derek Shaw. "He was here with a group earlier. Like 10 guys, loud." "That narrows it down to everyone." The woman gave a small, embarrassed laugh. "Yeah," he said he called, but nobody answered. "We don't answer after close. He's freaking out. I can wait outside. I don't need to come in." Her name, we learned, was Lena Shaw, 28, female, a nursing assistant from Mill Creek, who had come straight from UPMC Hamot after a 12-hour shift because her younger brother had no car and a talent for making small problems contagious. Lena had the habit of apologizing before she had done anything wrong. She kept glancing back at her sedan, as if expecting someone to rear-end it in the empty lot. Tasha shut the door, removed the chain, and opened it just wide enough to step into the vestibule. "Wallet on lane 8. That's what he said. Color, blue, like navy." Tasha looked past me into the bowling alley. Lane 8 waited at the far end of the row, pins standing neat and bright. Mark emerged from the back hallway near the arcade, wiping his hand. "Who's that?" "Customer's sister," Tasha said. "Wallet. Tell her come back tomorrow." "She's right here, Mark." "Good." Then she heard me. Lena's face tightened, but she said nothing. I recognized that too, the look of someone too tired to argue but too desperate to leave. Tasha rubbed her forehead with 2 fingers. "Eddie, go check the seating area. Don't go past the foul line. Mark, kill the breaker." "I was going to before we started hosting guests," he said. "Then do it faster with your personality." I took the spray bottle and rag because my hands needed an excuse. Walking back toward lane 8, I passed the dark arcade machines. Big Buck Hunter, a claw machine full of limp plush animals, an air hockey table with 1 paddle missing. The carpet felt slightly sticky under my shoes. Somewhere above the ceiling tiles, wind pushed against a loose vent and made it tick in uneven time. Lena stayed near the front with Tasha, arms wrapped around herself. At lane 8's seating area, the molded plastic chairs were pulled out from the little round table. There were beer rings on the surface, a basket with 2 cold fries stuck to wax paper, and a receipt signed with a cartoon penis. Normal evidence of normal idiots. I checked under the chairs, between the ball racks, behind the trash can. No wallet. The green ball sat in the return cradle, its drilled holes facing up like it wanted fingers. I did not touch it. "Anything?" Tasha called. "No." Mark came out from the side door that led behind the lanes, his keys jangling from a belt clip. "Breaker's off." As he said it, the overhead monitor for lane 8 flickered, not fully on. Just a weak gray pulse across the dead screen, a box of light breathing once. Then the pin setter cycled. The sweep bar dropped hard this time. The pins vanished backward into the pit with a wooden plastic scatter. The machine thumped, belts turned, cups clacked overhead, and 10 pins set themselves back down in a clean formation. The breaker was off. Mark stopped walking. Tasha stopped breathing through her nose. I could hear it switch to her mouth from 20 feet away. Lena whispered, "Was that supposed to happen?" Nobody answered her right away. Mark moved first, fast for a man with bad knees. He went to the console, bent under it, and yanked the plug from the wall so hard the cord snapped against the panel. The scoring console went completely dead. The monitor stayed black. The machine at the end of lane 8 sat still for 3 seconds. Then a red dot appeared on the overhead display. Just 1 pixel at first, maybe not even a pixel, maybe a reflection from the exit sign. It widened into a thin horizontal line, trembled, and disappeared. Tasha said, "Nope." Mark pointed at me without looking. "Back office. Flashlight, the big one, also my lockout tags." "What is it?" "I don't know yet." "That's not comforting. It's not supposed to be comforting. It's supposed to get you moving." I went. The back office was more closet than room, packed with old league trophies, cases of receipt paper, a bulletin board covered in faded employee schedules, and 1 framed photo from 1998 showing Lakeview lanes with fresh paint and a grand reopening banner. The office smelled like dust warming on electronics. I found Mark's yellow flashlight on the filing cabinet beside a stack of unpaid invoices and a bottle of ibuprofen. My phone buzzed while I was reaching for the lockout tag kit. It was my father. Not a call, a text. "You awake?" I looked at it too long. My father never texted unless he needed something or had decided to forgive himself in my direction. He lived 30 minutes south in Edinburgh with a bad hip and a house full of things he refused to repair until they became emergencies. I had missed his last 3 calls, not because I hated him. That would have been simpler. I missed them because every conversation with him made me feel like I was standing in a hallway outside a room I had already failed to enter. Another buzz. Basement pump S making that sound again. I locked the phone and put it in my pocket. When I came back, Tasha had let Lena inside, but kept her near the shoe counter. The front door was locked again. Mark stood at the edge of lane 8, staring down the lane like it had insulted his family. I handed him the flashlight. "Stay here," he said. "Thought you needed help. I need someone who listens. That you? Depends who's asking." He gave me a look. "Fine," I said. "I'll listen." Tasha checked her phone. I should call Ray. Ray Bishop, 58, male, owned Lakeview Lanes, though owned mostly meant he owed money on it in several directions. He lived in Fairview and treated every maintenance issue like a personal betrayal. Ray had a soft voice, a red face, and a gift for making employees feel that broken equipment was their moral failure. Mark shook his head. "Ray'll say unplug it. It is unplugged. Then he'll say plug it back in and see if it still does it." Tasha looked at lane 8. "We are not doing that." Lena lifted a hand slightly. "I don't mean to be rude, but can I just check the table?" Derek said he might have dropped it behind the seats. Tasha started to say no. I could see it forming. "No, come back tomorrow. No, insurance. No, This is already weird enough, and I have 2 kids asleep at home and a drawer that is still $12 off. Then lane 8 made that small, careful click again. One pin shifted, the head pin. It rocked in place, barely an inch, and settled. No full cycle, no sweep, no crash, just a little adjustment, as if someone unseen in the machinery had straightened it. Mark turned the flashlight on. The beam hit the pins and made them shine too white. "I'm opening the back guard," he said. Tasha immediately said, "No, I need to see if there's a stuck cam or a backfeed from another circuit. The breaker's off. I heard you the first time. So why is it moving? That's what I'm trying to find out." Tasha looked at me, then at Lena. "Nobody goes near the lane." Mark gave a humorless laugh. "Nobody should ever go near the lane. That's my daily prayer." Lena's phone rang. She flinched and answered it, turning away. "Derek, I'm here. No, I'm inside. No, they haven't found it." Her voice lowered, irritated and tired. Brother and sister stuff. The kind that made the rest of us look away politely. Mark opened the side access door and started toward the back walkway again. Tasha followed him 2 steps, then stopped because she knew better than to enter the machine area without him waving her in. "Mark," she said, "you get hurt back there. I'm calling 911 before Ray. I'm serious. I get hurt back there. Tell Ray I died doing what he loved. Free labor. Not funny." "No," he said, and for once his voice softened. "It is." He disappeared behind the pinsetter housing. The building seemed to gather its old sounds around us. Compressor hum, rain ticking at the roof edge, distant traffic dragging water along the street, Lena murmuring into her phone, Tasha's nails tapping against her register key, my own breathing too loud inside my head. I thought about my father's basement pump, about water rising around cardboard boxes, about how easy it was to ignore a sound until it became damage. Mark's flashlight beam jittered behind the pins. Then he said, very calmly, "Tasha." She straightened. "What? Kill the main? The whole building?" "Yes." "Why?" His flashlight beam froze. "There's a wallet back here," he said. "Blue." Lena stopped talking mid-sentence. I looked from her to Tasha to the pins standing on lane 8, perfect and patient. Tasha took the office keys from her pocket. "Nobody moves." Mark said, "Eddie, come hold the light." Tasha snapped. "I just said nobody moves." "I need hands," Mark said. Lena lowered her phone. "Is it Derek S.?" "Can't tell from here," Mark said. "It's behind the machine." The choice sat there, ugly and practical. Kill the main power first and leave Mark half bent behind equipment he did not trust, or send someone in with a flashlight while the machine that should have been dead waited over a wallet nobody could explain. Tasha looked at me. I looked at the dark service door beside lane 8 and at the green ball in the return cradle, turned slightly now, thumb hole aimed toward the back like someone had used it after all. I said, "I'll hold the light." Tasha closed her eyes for 1 second, opened them, and put the keys into my hand instead. "Then you listen exactly," she said, "or I drag you out by your shirt." Behind the pins, Mark called, "Decision time, kids." None of us laughed. The service door to the back of the lanes had a sign on it that said employees, only machine area, authorized personnel, which was mostly they're so drunk bowlers could not sue us after crawling into a pinsetter to impress somebody named Amber. I had walked through that door maybe 30 times, never with my skin tight across my shoulders like that. The air changed immediately. Out front, Lakeview Lane smelled like old fries and shoe spray. Back there, it smelled like warm rubber, dust, gear oil, and the faint hot metal tang of machinery that had worked too hard for too many years. The floor was narrow and gritty. One side was painted cinder block. The other opened into the backs of the pinsetters, their steel frames packed close together like industrial skeletons. Mark's flashlight beam bounced ahead of me. "Step where I step," he said. "Don't lean on anything. Don't put your hand anywhere you can't see all sides of." "Comforting," I said. "I'm not your mother. No one is asking you to be. Good, because I'd have raised you to move faster." I held the bigger flashlight Tasha had shoved into my hand, aiming it where Mark pointed. My other hand held the ring of office keys, though I had no idea why. They knocked softly against my knuckles with every step. Behind us, Tasha stood at the open service door with one foot in the machine area and one foot still on carpet, like her whole body was arguing with itself. Lena hovered farther back, near the ball racks, phone clutched in both hands. "Derek says it was definitely in his back pocket," Lena called. Tasha did not look away from me and Mark. "Tell Derek I'm thrilled for his memory. He says he went back there." Everybody stopped. Even the building seemed to pause around that sentence, though of course it didn't. Motors still hummed somewhere. A vent rattled. Rain touched the roof in quick little taps. Mark turned slowly. "He went where?" Lena swallowed. "He said one of the balls got stuck, and some guy told him to grab it from behind." "What guy?" Tasha asked. "I don't know. He said an employee." Tasha's face changed in a way I had seen before, usually when the register came up short or a customer asked for the manager with a smile. Her jaw tightened first, then her eyes narrowed like she was reading a small label from far away. "No employee would tell a customer to go behind the machines," she said. Mark gave a dry laugh. "No sober employee." "No employee," Tasha repeated. I thought about Derek Shaw's group from earlier. 10 guys, Lena had said, loud. I remembered them now in pieces. A spilled pitcher at lane 8, one guy wearing a Browns hoodie despite being in Steelers country, another trying to bowl between his legs and almost tearing something important. They had left close to 11:30, laughing too hard, one of them slapping the wall near the bathrooms as they passed. Had I seen Derek? Maybe. A guy with sandy hair and a red flannel tied around his waist. Or maybe that was someone else. Closing shifts turned people into shapes. You remembered the mess they left more than their faces. Mark moved again. "Then your brother's an idiot." Lena stiffened. "He's 22. Same thing, different warranty." "Mark," Tasha snapped. "What? You want me to say good for him?" Lena's voice got thinner. "He's not answering me now." That landed differently. Tasha stepped toward her. "He was on the phone a second ago." He hung up, or it cut out. He said he was outside, then there was this noise, and then nothing. "What noise?" "I don't know. Like scraping." He said, "Wait, is that your car?" Then the call dropped. The time-sensitive part arrived so plainly that nobody had to name it. A brother outside somewhere. A wallet behind a dangerous machine. A bowling alley that should have been powered down, but kept making little movements it had no right to make. And now Lena's silver sedan idling in the lot with its hazards blinking, throwing orange light against the wet front windows. Tasha looked toward the entrance. "I'm locking her in," she said. Lena blinked. "What? Not like that. I mean, you're not going back outside alone. My brother might be out there. And if some drunk friend of his is messing around in the parking lot, I'm not sending you out to be part 2. Lena opened her mouth, then closed it. She looked younger under the fluorescent light. tired and angry and scared in a way she was trying to compress into usefulness. Mark grunted. "Main breaker, now." "I'm going," Tasha said. Then to me, "You stay in sight." "You handed me the keys." I changed my mind. I lifted them. She came in 2 steps and snatched the key ring back, muttering, "Why did I do that? Why would I give keys to the man who once locked himself inside the stockroom?" It was jammed. "You pushed a pull door." It had mixed messaging. Under other circumstances, she would have made that land as a joke. It didn't. Her voice had too much edge in it. Tasha disappeared toward the back office and breaker room, fast but careful, her sneakers squeaking on the old tile. Lena followed her halfway, then stopped, torn between the front doors and the lanes. Mark crouched behind lane 8. There was the wallet. Blue leather, half wedged behind a crossbar near the pit, close enough to see, but far enough in that you had to reach past parts with teeth and leverage. It lay under a dusting of black rubber shavings. One corner was wet with lane oil. Beside it, caught against the metal frame, was a torn strip of red and white cloth. Mark saw me looking at it. "Don't touch that," he said. "The wallet, the cloth. What is it? Not part of the machine." That was all he said. He angled his small work light into the guts of the pinsetter. I aimed the big flashlight over his shoulder, trying to keep my beam steady. The machinery looked different from the back, less like bowling, and more like something from a packaging plant. Belts, pulleys, springs, steel rods, chains, wire harnesses zip-tied in bundles. Every part had another part near it that looked like it could break a finger without noticing. "The whole thing should be dead?" I asked. "Desk power, pinsetter breaker, pair disconnect. Dead enough for inspection normally." "Normally," he glanced at me. "Normally people aren't chasing wallets at 1 a.m. It's not 1, it's emotionally 1. A clunk came from somewhere above us. Not lane 8, maybe lane 9, maybe the roof shifting in the wind." I flinched, and my flashlight beam jerked. Mark said, "Hold it steady." "Sorry." Steady keeps my hand attached. That helped. Fear got worse when it was shapeless. And was specific. Losing one was specific. I locked my elbow against my side and held the beam on the wallet. Out front, Lena tried calling Derek again. We heard the faint electronic trill from her phone speaker, then her low voice saying, "Come on, come on." No answer. Mark reached in with a long metal grabber he used for pins stuck in awkward places. The claw touched the wallet once and pushed it deeper. "Damn it. Can you get it?" "Not from this angle." "Should we wait for the main to be off?" He didn't answer. That scared me more than if he had snapped at me. Tasha came back from the office hallway, walking fast. "Problem." Mark stayed crouched. "I love problems. The breaker room door is locked from the inside." Mark twisted his head. "No, it is." "Yes, it is. It doesn't lock from the inside. It does tonight. There's no inside lock." I stood there for 10 seconds, pushing a key into a knob that won't turn Mark. He stood too quickly and winced at his knee. "Show me." We all went, because apparently that was what we did now. Gathered around the next wrong thing and stared at it until it became our responsibility. The breaker room was off the short hallway behind the snack bar, past the office and the employee bathroom. Its door was gray metal, chipped around the handle, with a little sign Ray had printed that said "No storage in electrical room." Naturally, there were always boxes in there. Tasha inserted the key again and turned. The knob moved a fraction and stopped hard. Mark took the keys, tried his own, cursed, then pushed his shoulder into the door. It did not budge. "Something's blocking it," he said. From inside, Tasha asked. Feels like it. How? He looked at the top hinge, then the bottom, then the gap under the door. He got down with a grunt and shined his light beneath it. What do you see? I asked. Cardboard. Tasha threw both hands up. Of course. Of course, Ray stacked boxes against the main panel after telling us not to stack boxes against the main panel. Could be toppled, Mark said. Roof leak got them soft. They sag, they fall, and block the only room we need. Welcome to commercial property. Lena had drifted toward the front windows, still trying her brother. Her face was reflected in the glass over the orange blink of her hazards. His car isn't out there, she said suddenly. Tasha turned. Who? Derek. He doesn't have one, but his friend Kyle drove him. He said Kyle was waiting with him. Maybe they left, without his wallet. People do stupid things when they've been drinking. Lena looked at her phone. Derek doesn't drink much. Tasha made a face, not cruel, just unbelieving. He doesn't, Lena said louder. Not since our dad. Nobody asked. Nobody had to. There was a whole family history sitting behind those 3 words, and none of us had room for it in the hallway. Tasha softened a little. Okay, call Kyle. I don't have Kyle's number. Call Derek again. I am, Mark straightened. We need the main off. Doors blocked. We can pop the hinge pins. With what? I asked. He looked at me like I had disappointed him personally. Tools, Edward. Nobody called me Edward except my father and Mark when he wanted me to feel 12. We got a hammer and flathead from the maintenance cart. While Mark worked at the hinges, Tasha stood with a flashlight over him, and Lena kept moving between the front windows and the shoe counter. I watched lane 8 from the hallway. That was my job, though no one had assigned it out loud. From where I stood, I could see the first few lanes stretching away, dim and glossy. Lane 8 was farther down, past the arcade's dark shapes. The pins were visible as a white cluster at the end, too small from that distance to make out details. They did not move. Then the green ball rolled. Not all the way, just enough to shift in the return cradle with a heavy rubbery bump. I said, guys. Mark kept tapping the hinge pin. What? The ball moved. Tasha looked at me. I didn't see what did it, I said. It just rocked. Floor vibration, Mark said, from Lena, my car. We all turned again. The hazards outside were still blinking, but now the sedan's driver's side door hung open. Cold air seemed to crawl in just from seeing it. Lena ran for the front. Tasha grabbed her arm before she got 3 steps. No, my door's open. I can see that. My purse is in there. You are not going out. Lena yanked once hard. Let go. Tasha did, but she stepped in front of her. Listen to me. I'm calling the police. That changed the air in the building again. It should have made things feel safer. It didn't. It made the whole night official. Tasha took out her phone and dialed, speaking quickly when the dispatcher answered. Bowling alley, possible intruder, employee area, vehicle door open, missing person maybe, no visible weapon, no one injured yet. She kept her voice impressively flat. The only crack was the yet. Mark stopped tapping the hinge. Police are coming, he asked. Yes, then we wait, for the main, for everything. That was the correct answer. It was also the one none of us liked, because waiting gave the building time to do whatever it was doing. Tasha relayed our address twice. She listened, then said, No, we're inside. Front doors locked. 4 people. A pause. Yes, we can stay away from the back area. Mark gave a small nod, approving. Then, from behind the lanes, someone knocked. 3 times, not machinery, not a pin, not a ball, knuckle on metal. Lena made a sound like she had been hit in the stomach. The knocking came again. 3 times, evenly spaced, from somewhere behind lanes 7 and 8. Tasha lowered the phone from her ear just slightly. Mark. Mark's face had gone still. I hated that. Mark was best when irritated. Stillness did not suit him. Could be a trapped customer, I said. Tasha's eyes cut toward me. Do not. I'm just saying. A trapped customer who opened Lena's car and hid behind our lanes. Maybe Derek. Lena whispered, Derek. The knocking came a third time. Then a voice, muffled by machinery and distance. Hey, male. Young, maybe. Hard to tell with metal between us. Lena lurched forward. Derek. Tasha grabbed her again. This time Lena fought, twisting her shoulder, panic making her stronger and clumsier. Derek, she shouted. Derek, answer me. The voice came back, distorted. Help, Mark moved before Tasha finished swearing. Back walkway, he said. Now, you just said wait, Tasha snapped. If he's actually in the pit area, he could get crushed if the machine cycles. The machine has no power. Tell it that. The dispatcher's voice chirped faintly from Tasha's phone. Tasha lifted it back to her ear. We hear someone behind the lanes. We are going to check from the service walkway. Yes, I know. Tell them to hurry. I followed Mark again because he had not asked, and because that made it worse. Lena tried to come, but Tasha blocked her with her whole body. No, you stay where I can see you. That's my brother. And I am trying to keep you from being the second person I have to explain to police. For 1 second, I thought Lena might hit her. Then her face crumpled around the edges, not into crying exactly, but into something close enough to hurt. The back walkway seemed narrower the second time. Mark moved faster now, limping through it. I kept the flashlight on the floor and machine frames. My heartbeat was too loud, and I kept telling myself that it was simple. A drunk young guy had gone where he shouldn't. The equipment had a short or a stuck relay. Lena's car door had been pulled open by Derek or Kyle or the wind, because people never latched things properly when they were scared or drunk or both. Simple. Stupid. Human. We reached lane 8. Derek, Mark shouted. Do not move if you're near the machine. A weak voice answered from lower down. I can't, Lena cried out from the lane side, much closer than she should have been. She had slipped past Tasha. Derek, get back, Mark roared. I swung the flashlight and caught Lena at the edge of the approach, 1 foot over the foul line, hands out as if she could reach through 30 feet of polished lane and pull her brother from the dark. Tasha was behind her, grabbing at her sleeve. Then the overhead monitor flickered again. A gray blink. The pin setter made a warning buzz, so faint I felt it in my teeth more than heard it. Mark shoved me backward with one arm. Out. What about out? The machine cycled. Not fully. Not correctly. Weep arm dropped halfway with a metallic bark and jammed. Something inside the back assembly snapped taut. A belt started moving, slow and ugly, dragging against resistance. A male voice screamed from behind the pit. Mark lunged for an emergency stop button mounted on the rear frame and punched it with the heel of his hand. Nothing happened. He punched it again. The belt kept moving. Main, he shouted. The door's blocked. Tasha screamed back. There was no time to argue, and somehow arguing still happened. Then break it open. With what? Anything. I saw Derek then. Not his whole body. Just a hand clamped around a lower rail behind the pit curtain, fingers black with grease and dust, 1 knuckle split open. A blue hospital wristband was wrapped around his wrist, which made no sense until I realized it was probably from visiting someone, or donating blood, or getting checked after something dumb. His fingers slipped, caught again. Mark dropped flat, and reached toward him. "Don't pull," Mark barked. "Tell me what's caught." "My jacket," Derek gasped. My hoodie's caught." "In what?" "I don't know." Behind me, Tasha grabbed the metal trash can from beside the employee bathroom and slammed it into the breaker room door. Once, twice, a hollow, useless boom. Lena screamed her brother's name. The belt slowed, then sped up by an inch. Mark's face twisted. "Eddie, hold the light on his sleeve." I did. The beam landed on red fabric bunched around a turning shaft, winding tighter by tiny degrees. Red and white cloth. The same torn strip we had seen by the wallet. Derek was being pulled toward the machine, slowly enough to watch and fast enough to matter. That is a horrible kind of time. Mark reached for his utility knife. His hand slipped on the towel wrapped around his cut palm. The knife fell, bounced off the frame, and disappeared under the machinery. "Damn it, I can get it," I said. "No." But I was already crouching. Not brave, not really. It was more like my body moved before the sensible part caught up. I saw the knife near the base plate, just out of reach, and I thought about my father's text, the basement pump, the way I ignored problems until they flooded. I thought about every time I had waited for somebody else to do the hard part. My fingers closed around the knife. Something clanged above me, and Mark grabbed the back of my shirt so hard the collar cut into my throat. "Back." He hauled me out. I handed him the knife, hands shaking now, the kind of shaking you feel in your wrists first. Mark flicked it open and stretched toward Derek's sleeve. "Hold still," he said. "I am. Hold still better." The blade sawed through the fabric. One strand, two. The belt jerked and pulled the hoodie tighter against Derek's shoulder. Derek made a choked animal sound. Then the lights went out. All of them. The building dropped into emergency darkness, so abruptly my eyes filled with static. A second later, 2 battery exit signs glowed red, and the weak emergency lamps over the hallway clicked on, throwing everything into flat, ugly shadows. Tasha had got the main off. The belt stopped. For one clean second, relief passed through all of us. Then someone pounded on the front glass. Not 3 polite knocks this time. A frantic hammering, both fists, hard enough to rattle the locked doors. Tasha shouted, "Police." No answer came. Only the pounding. Then a man's voice from outside yelled, "Open the door." "He's got Kyle." Lena froze. Mark still had one hand on Derek and the knife in the other. Tasha stood in the hallway beside the broken-looking breaker room door, phone pressed to her ear, face lit by the red exit sign. And from somewhere deep behind Lane 8, in the dark space under the pinsetter, Derek whispered, "That's not Kyle." For a second after Derek said, "That's not Kyle," nobody moved. The whole bowling alley seemed to shrink around the red glow of the exit signs. Out front, someone kept pounding on the glass doors. Not steady now. Bursts of it. 3 or 4 hits, then a pause, then another hit hard enough to make the metal frame chatter. Lena's hazards flashed through the windows in orange pulses, lighting the shoe counter, the racks of rental shoes, the prize machine, and Tasha's face in slices. Behind Lane 8, Derek's fingers were still hooked around the lower rail. Mark had one hand braced on the frame and the other gripping the half-cut sleeve of Derek's hoodie. His utility knife was open between his fingers, the blade catching a little red light every time the emergency lamp flickered. "Don't say dramatic things," Mark told Derek. His voice was rough, but controlled. "Say useful things. Who is outside?" Derek made a wet little cough. "I don't know. You saw him." "No, I heard him." How do you know it's not Kyle? Because Kyle was with me. Lena pushed toward the service doorway. Tasha caught her again, but this time it was less a grab and more a desperate hold, one arm around Lena's middle like she was restraining someone at a family funeral. "Where is Kyle?" Lena called. Derek's voice came from low behind the pit curtain. "He went to get help." Tasha looked toward the front doors, where the pounding started again. "Maybe that's help," I said. Derek answered before anyone else could. No, the word was small. That made it worse. The first attempt was the obvious one: get Derek free before dealing with whoever was outside. Mark shoved the flashlight into my hand. "Light on the sleeve, not his face. Sleeve. I've got it. You don't have it if I can't see threads. I've got it." He slid the blade under the last thick fold of hoodie. The main power was off now, but the pin setter did not feel dead. It felt paused. There is a difference. A dead machine becomes furniture. A paused one listens. It had weight and tension stored in it. Belts stretched tight, springs held at angles, metal waiting to fall or release or finish whatever it had started. Derek was on his side in the narrow space behind the pin deck, wedged between a lower support and the rear access area. He was a young man, 22 male, with sandy hair plastered to his forehead, and a face gone gray from pain and panic. He wore a red hoodie over jeans, and the right sleeve had wound into a rotating shaft far enough to pin his arm across his chest. His knuckles were scraped open. One cheek had a black smear of grease. There was blood on his lip where he had bitten it. "Can you move your fingers?" Mark asked. Derek flexed them. "Barely." "Good, keep doing that." "I can't feel two of them." "Keep doing that anyway." Mark cut more fabric. The hoodie loosened. Lena heard Derek gasp and made one herself. "We're getting him," I called, though I had no idea if that was true. The pounding at the front stopped. That pause dragged everyone's attention toward the entrance. A man's voice shouted through the glass, muffled by distance and doors. "Open it, open the door." Tasha lifted her phone. "Police are 3 minutes out." "You know that, or they said that?" Mark asked. "They said units are close." "That means 3 to 15. "Thank you, Mark. Specificity saves lives. So does shutting up." Mark cut the last bit of Derek's sleeve, and for one hopeful second, I thought that was it. Derek would slide out, Lena would scream and hug him, police would arrive, and everything after would become a story told at Christmas with the edges sanded down. Then Derek tried to pull back and screamed. His hoodie was free. His belt was not. Somehow, while struggling, the back of his leather belt had caught on a bent metal bracket under the rear frame. Not wrapped, just hooked. It held him at the hips like a fish on a gaff. "Stop moving," Mark snapped. "I'm stuck." "I know, that's why I said stop moving. I can't breathe right." "You can breathe because you're complaining." "Eddie, get lower. Shine under his left side." I crouched, knees grinding into grit and old pin dust. The flashlight beam found the belt, found the bracket, found something else. A black zip tie. Fresh. Clean. Not gray with dust like the old cable ties on the machine. It looped around part of the bracket, pulled tight, leaving a stiff cut end sticking out like a little tail. "Mark," I said, "I see it." "What is that?" "It's a zip tie." "I know what it is." "Then don't ask me questions you know the answer to." His tone was meaner than it needed to be. Fear did that to people. It made every word come out wearing boots. Tasha called from the lane side. "What's happening?" "Belt's caught," Mark said. "Can you free him?" "Working." He did not mention the zip tie. I noticed that. So did he. The front doors rattled again, but not from pounding now. A scraping sound crossed the glass. Long, slow, fingernails maybe, or metal. Lena started crying without making much sound, which was worse than if she had sobbed. Tasha backed away from the machine area and moved toward the front, phone in one hand, the other holding Mark's hammer. The bowling alley's geography became painfully clear to me then, like a map I could not stop seeing. Front entrance and shoe counter at the south end, lanes running north toward the pin decks, snack bar and office hallway on the east wall, arcade on the west side, machine area behind the lanes with its narrow service walkway, and us wedged behind lane 8 like idiots inside the most dangerous part of the building. Every way out had a problem. Front doors had the man outside. Emergency exit by the arcade led to the side alley, but we would have to cross the open floor and pass lane 8's approach to get there. Back service door by the pinsetters opened into the loading area, but Mark had told me earlier it stuck in wet weather, and Erie had been getting rain all night, and Derek could not move. Attempt 1 became partial success, his arm free, his body still trapped. Mark worked the knife under Derek's belt, not cutting the belt yet, trying to lift it off the bracket. Derek's breathing came in sharp little pulls. His left hand kept reaching for something and finding only air. "Lena," he called. "I'm here. I'm sorry." "Don't do that," she said. "Don't start saying sorry like you're dying. You're not dying. You're just being expensive." Derek let out a shaky laugh that turned into a cough. Tasha came back from the front, face tight. "He's gone from the door." That should have been good news. It was. "Gone where?" I asked. "I don't know. I didn't invite him to leave an itinerary." A sudden bang came from the arcade side of the building. Lena screamed. I flinched hard enough to slam my shoulder into the metal frame. Pain flashed down my arm. Another bang. Then a rattling, clattering rush. Tasha raised the hammer. Something moved in the darkness near the claw machine. Low and fast. For one horrible second, it looked like someone crawling between the arcade cabinets. And a plastic bucket rolled out into the aisle, hit the carpet transition, tipped, and spilled a scatter of old prize tokens and loose screws across the floor. The explanation came a heartbeat later. The air hockey table's missing paddle, balanced on the edge with the bucket during cleaning, had slipped when the side emergency exit sucked inward from a gust of wind. The door had not opened, but its loose seal flexed with the storm. The bucket had fallen. That was all. A stupid bucket. Nobody laughed. Misdirection is still fear if your body pays for it before your brain catches up. Tasha lowered the hammer slowly. "I hate this place," Mark grunted. "Get in line." The second attempt was to call the problem outward. Police, fire department, anybody with real tools and liability insurance. Tasha put the dispatcher on speaker so she could keep both hands free. Her voice had started to fray at the edges. "We have one person trapped in machinery. Main power is off. Possible intruder outside. Front doors locked. We need fire rescue too." The dispatcher's voice was calm enough to be irritating. "Ma'am, officers are en route. Fire and EMS are being notified. Stay away from the machinery if it is unsafe." Tasha looked at Mark, half hysterical with restraint. "She says stay away from the machinery." Mark did not look up. "Tell her noted." Tasha said noted in a voice that meant the opposite. Then the phone cut out. No beep, no warning. The call just died. Tasha stared at the screen. "No service." "Wi-Fi," I said. "Power's off." Your cell service shouldn't care. It apparently cares emotionally. She moved toward the front windows, phone raised, searching for bars. Lena followed, calling Derek's name over her shoulder. Mark finally cut Derek's belt. The leather parted with a hard little snap. Derek slid 6 inches and cried out. "Good," Mark said. "Good, that's good." "That didn't sound good," I said. "Pain means he's alive and dramatic." Grab under his shoulders. I thought I wasn't supposed to touch him. "Now you are." I reached around Derek from behind, awkwardly, trying not to put weight on any machine part. He smelled like sweat, beer that was not necessarily his, rainwater, and grease. He was heavier than he looked. When we pulled, he moved another foot, then stopped again. His shoe was caught. Of course it was. The heel of his right sneaker had wedged beneath a low guard plate. Mark cursed in a way that sounded almost artistic. Derek started to shake. "Get it off, just get it off." "Untie it," Mark said. "I can't reach, Eddie." I had to crawl lower, close enough that the grit stuck to my cheek. The emergency light did not reach under there, so I held the flashlight in my teeth for a second, tasting dust and rubber on the handle. My shoulder throbbed from where I had hit the frame. My knees felt wet, though I couldn't tell whether it was water, oil, or sweat. I untied Derek's shoe with fingers that did not want to work. The lace was double knotted. Naturally, from the front, Tasha called, "Eddie." "What? Your phone have service?" I fumbled it out and checked. 1 bar. A text notification sat there from my father. "Water S in the basement now." Below it, another. "Forget it. I'll call your cousin." It hit me harder than it should have. My father was not trapped under a pin sitter. He was not outside a bowling alley with some man screaming about Kyle. He was standing in a wet basement, probably angry, probably scared in a way he would turn into anger, because that was the only shape he trusted. And I had done what I always did. I had waited long enough to make myself unnecessary. "Eddie," Mark snapped. I realized I had stopped untying the shoe. "Sorry, be sorry faster." I got the knot loose. We pulled Derek free of the shoe and dragged him out backward along the service walkway. Out in pieces, shoulder, hip, knee, 1 socked foot, torn hoodie hanging from him like shed skin. Lena ran to him the moment he cleared the machine area. This time Tasha did not stop her. Derek collapsed against the cinder block wall. Lena dropped beside him, hands moving over his face, his arms, his chest, checking him like she had done it 100 times at work and never once on her brother. "My hand," he said. "I know. My side hurts." "I know." "Lena, Kyle, breathe first." "We have to get Kyle." Tasha, holding her phone near the front windows, turned sharply. "Where is Kyle?" Derek looked past her toward the lanes. He was behind 9. Mark went still again. "What do you mean behind 9?" he asked. "The guy told us the ball was stuck. He said go through the side door and push it loose." Kyle went first. I was behind him. Then the lights flickered and something moved and Kyle yelled. I tried to back out, but my sleeve caught. Tasha said, "What guy, Derek?" "I don't know." "What did he look like?" Derek squeezed his eyes shut. "Employee shirt, dark hat." "We don't wear hats," I said. "He had keys." "Ray?" Tasha asked Mark. "Ray's in Fairview. You sure?" "No, I'm not his wife." The front glass rattled again. Not the doors this time. The side window by the arcade. A face appeared there, pale in the emergency light. Lena made a broken sound. The man outside pressed one hand flat to the glass. He was in his 20s, male, with dark hair plastered to his forehead and a bleeding cut above one eyebrow. His mouth moved, but we could not hear him through the window and the rain. "That's Kyle," Derek whispered. Tasha ran toward the arcade side. "Wait," Mark shouted. But she was already there, hammer in hand, phone in her back pocket, moving between the claw machine and Big Buck Hunter toward the side emergency exit. Kyle slapped the glass again and pointed toward the back of the building. Then he vanished downward, not walked away, dropped. Lena screamed his name, though she had only just learned what he looked like. Tasha reached the side exit and shoved the push bar. The door opened 2 inches and stopped. A chain on the outside snapped tight. Tasha shoved again. Metal bit metal. The door would not open farther. "We're chained in," she said. That was the point where the night stopped being an equipment malfunction with a suspicious customer attached. Someone had chained the side exit from outside. Mark took the hammer from Tasha and struck the gap near the chain. Once, twice. The sound rang through the arcade. The chain held. "Back service door," he said. "We moved as a group now because separating had started to feel like volunteering." Derek limped with Lena under one arm and me under the other. His sock dragged through dust. Tasha carried the hammer. Mark had the utility knife and flashlight. The police should have been there. Maybe they were close. Maybe they were outside dealing with whoever had been pounding. Maybe our dead phones had eaten the update. The lack of sirens made the building feel farther from the city than it was. We went behind the lanes again, past the machine frames, toward the north loading area. The back service door was a heavy metal slab beside stacked boxes of Lane oil and a trash bin full of broken pins. It opened to the rear lot, where deliveries came in. Mark hit the push bar. Nothing. He hit it harder. The door shifted at the top, but not the bottom. "Swollen frame?" I asked. No, he shined the flashlight down. A metal wedge had been jammed under the door from outside. Bright, new, and deliberate. Tasha whispered, "Oh my God." Mark stepped back. For once, he had no joke. We were locked in from the front by caution, from the side by a chain, from the back by a wedge. And the only people who seemed to know why were either outside in the rain or somewhere in the dark lanes with access to keys. Then the bowling alley came back to life. Not all of it, just lane 8. The overhead monitor flickered gray. The pin setter buzzed. 10 white pins dropped into place with a clean, professional clack. But the main power was still off. Tasha stared at the glowing monitor. How? Mark looked toward the machines, then to the ceiling, then to the emergency lights. "Generator line," he said quietly. "What generator line?" Ray had one installed for the freezer and emergency circuits. Cheap job. I told him not to tie anything else into it. The pins clicked again. Lane 9's monitor blinked on next. Derek grabbed Lena's sleeve. Kyle was behind 9. From somewhere behind lane 9, low and close, a man screamed once. Then the scream cut off. Nobody waited for a plan after that. Mark moved toward lane 9. Tasha grabbed his arm. "No, police, we wait. We're locked in," Mark said. "So we make noise. We break glass. Emergency glass is wired. You want to climb through that in the rain with him bleeding and someone outside. We can't go deeper. Someone already is deeper." Lane 8 cycled behind us. Lane 9 hummed. The machines were waking one by one along the back wall, not in order, but close enough to feel like a sequence. And then the point of no return came with a small, ordinary sound. The front door lock clicked. All of us heard it over the machinery. Not a rattle, not a knock, a key turning. From the front of the bowling alley, beyond the dark arcade and the long, polished lanes, the main entrance opened. Cold, wet air rushed inside. A man's voice called out in a friendly, practiced tone. "Everybody okay in here?" Mark whispered. "That's not police." Tasha lifted the hammer. Derek, gray-faced and shaking between Lena and me, looked toward lane 9. The service walkway behind us narrowed into darkness. The front of the building had just been opened by someone with a key, and Kyle had gone quiet behind the next machine. There was no safe direction left. The man who came in through the front did not rush. That was the first thing that made him worse than the pounding at the glass, worse than the machines waking up one by one behind us. He stepped inside like he had opened the alley 1,000 times before, like the cold rain at his back and the emergency lights and the dead monitors were all part of a closing routine. The door shut behind him. The lock clicked again. "Everybody okay?" he called. His voice carried down the lanes with that forced brightness people use when they already know the answer and want you to say it first. Tasha tightened both hands around the hammer. In the red exit light, she looked smaller than usual and somehow more solid, like all the softness had been pressed out of her. Mark stood beside lane 9's machine, housing with the flashlight angled down, utility knife in his right hand. Lena had one arm around Derek. I had his other side, his weight dragging on me, his socked foot sliding on the gritty walkway. Derek whispered, "That's him." The man walked past the shoe counter, past the rental racks, past the snack bar where the fryer oil had cooled into a thick, stale smell. He wore a dark polo shirt tucked into jeans, a black baseball cap pulled low, and a cheap blue windbreaker with no logo. In the dark, from a distance, tired and drunk and stupid, he could have looked like staff. He stopped at lane 4 and looked down the building toward us. "Mark," he said, "that you back there?" Mark went very still. Tasha glanced at him. "You know him?" Mark's jaw moved once before he answered. "Dean." The name meant nothing to me. It clearly meant plenty to Mark. Dean lifted one hand, palm out, casual as a neighbor across a driveway. He was maybe late 30s, male, lean and pale, with a narrow face and a wet shine on his jacket shoulders. He smiled without showing teeth. "Just wanted to talk," Dean said. "You chained my side door," Tasha called. "Had to keep everyone inside till I got back. You wedged the rear door. Same reason. You trapped a kid in a pin setter," Mark said. Dean's smile twitched. "That wasn't the plan." Lena made a sound from deep in her chest. "Where's Kyle?" Dean's eyes flicked toward her, then to Derek. Kyle should have stayed put. Derek tried to step forward and nearly collapsed. I caught him under the arm, pain shooting through my already bruised shoulder. "Don't," I hissed. "He hit Kyle," Derek said, "behind 9. With something." Dean's voice sharpened. "He jumped me." "He's 19, Lena snapped, "and I'm out of patience." Lane 8 cycled behind us. A heavy mechanical thump. Pins swept, lifted, reset. Lane 9 hummed like it wanted to join in. Mark looked over his shoulder toward the machines, then back to Dean. "You ran emergency power to 8 and 9. Dean gave a little laugh. Ray ran emergency power to whatever I told him would keep his freezer from thawing during storms. Ray signs checks if you say code compliance slow enough. Tasha said, "You're the electrician." "Was," Mark said. Dean's eyes tightened. "Contractor, not electrician. You never got that right. I got enough right to kick you out." For the first time, Dean's face showed something real. Not fear, resentment. Old and shiny. Mark spoke without looking at us. Dean Mercer, 38, used to do wiring and cheap repair jobs for Ray. Got fired after he bypassed safety interlocks on 10 and 11, because it was faster than fixing them. Dean spread his hands. They worked. They almost crushed a mechanic from Buffalo during a tournament. He put his arm where it didn't belong. Mark's voice dropped. You told 2 kids to put their whole bodies where they didn't belong. Another sound came from behind lane 9. A low moan. Kyle. Lena turned toward it. We have to get him. Dean's eyes went there too. His expression changed again, calculations sliding into place. No, Mark said, reading it. Don't. Dean bolted. Not toward us. Toward the lane controls. He ran along the approaches, shoes squeaking on the polished floor, one hand skimming the ball returns. Tasha moved before I understood what he was doing. She sprinted down the carpet edge, hammer raised, but Dean had a head start and knew exactly where he was going. He reached the console between lanes 9 and 10 and punched something under the panel. Lane 9's pin setter came alive with a buzz that built fast. Mark cursed and shoved past me. Eddie light. I let go of Derek. Lena took his weight and staggered. I ran after Mark into the narrow service space behind lane 9, flashlight bouncing uselessly until I forced my hand steady. Kyle was wedged lower than Derek had been. Kyle Porter, 19, male, dark-haired, bleeding from a cut above his eyebrow, was half under the rear lip of lane 9's machine, one leg twisted awkwardly, and both arms clamped around a steel support. His hoodie was black, soaked at the sleeves. Blood striped down the side of his face and dripped off his chin onto the concrete. A length of extension cord had been looped around his ankle and tied off to a lower bracket. Not caught, tied. The scream that had cut off earlier made sense now. Dean had not needed the machine to trap him. The machine was the threat. The cord was the leash. Mark dropped beside him. Kyle, look at me. Kyle blinked slowly, unfocused. Don't sleep, Mark said. Bad place for a nap. The sweep arm above the lane jerked. Mark, I said, I know. Lane 9's motor groaned, not running clean, fighting the main power cut and the generator feed, the sort of wrong electrical sound even I could hear. Mark sawed at the extension cord with his utility knife. The blade bit in, slipped, bit again. From the front, Tasha and Dean collided. The hammer hit the floor with a heavy crack. Dean grabbed Tasha by the front of her shirt and slammed her against the ball return between lanes 6 and 7. The sound of her back hitting plastic carried through the building. Tasha, I shouted. Light, Mark barked. I aimed back at Kyle. This was the ugly part. Help one person and listen to another get hurt. Choose a direction and feel the other one tearing at you. Dean and Tasha struggled in the open lane area, both half lit by the emergency lamps and the flickering monitors. She drove a knee into him. He grunted and hit her with his forearm, not a clean punch, but hard enough to knock her sideways. She fell against lane 7's approach, palms squeaking on the polished surface. Lena screamed at him from the service doorway. Stop. Derek, barely able to stand, grabbed one of the broken pins from the trash bin by the rear door. His face had gone loose and determined in a way I did not like. Derek, no, Lena said. He limped forward anyway. Lane 9 clanked. Mark cut through half the cord. Pull him when I say, he told me. Okay, not before. Okay. Dean saw Derek coming and laughed once, breathless. You can barely walk. Derek swung the broken pin anyway. It connected with Dean's shoulder, not his head, with a dull, hard knock. Dean shouted and stumbled into the lane 7 ball return. Tasha crawled toward the hammer. Then the greenhouse ball moved. It rolled out of lane 8's return cradle, slow at first, then faster as it crossed the sloped edge of the approach. For a stupid half-second, I thought the building was doing it again. Then I saw Lena. She had pushed it. The chipped 10-pound green ball rolled across the approach toward Dean's legs. It was not cinematic. It wobbled. It almost veered. It hit the edge between lanes 7 and 8, corrected, and caught Dean at the ankle as he lunged for Derek. Dean went down hard. His head clipped the corner of the plastic scoring stand with a flat sound that made everyone freeze. He hit the lane and slid a foot, leaving a smear of rainwater and something darker near his hairline. Tasha grabbed the hammer. Dean rolled, dazed but moving. "Stay down," she shouted. He did not. Mark cut the rest of the cord. Now, I grabbed Kyle under the arms and pulled. He was dead weight, slick with rain and sweat. Mark lifted his trapped leg. Kyle screamed. The extension cord snapped free and whipped against my wrist, leaving a hot stripe of pain. We dragged him backward just as lane 9's sweep dropped. It came down where his shoulders had been. Not fast enough to kill cleanly maybe. Fast enough to break bones. Fast enough to pin him until something else finished the job. The bar struck the lower frame and jammed with a metal shriek. Kyle was out. Barely. He vomited once onto the concrete, then sobbed like he hated himself for it. "Good," Mark said, breathing hard. "Puking is alive." Out front, Dean got to his feet. Blood ran from his hairline down his temple. His eyes were unfocused for 1 second, then found Mark. "You ruined me," Dean said. Mark pushed himself upright, knees shaking. "You did the wiring. You called the inspector. You bypassed safeties. You made sure no one hired me after. You made sure of that when you nearly killed a man." Dean reached into his windbreaker pocket. Tasha saw it first. Knife. Everything snapped into shorter pieces. Dean moved. Tasha threw the hammer. It missed his head and struck the scoring console between lanes 7 and 8, cracking plastic, sending sparks, and a dying blue flicker across the display. Dean came down the approach toward us. Mark stepped into the service doorway, blocking the path from the lanes into the rear walkway. "Back," he said to us. There was nowhere back enough. Lena and Derek crouched by the wall. Kyle lay on his side, gasping. I stood with the flashlight in one hand and nothing in the other. My phone buzzed again in my pocket. I ignored it, not avoidance this time. Choice. Dean had a folding knife. Small blade, real enough. "Move," he said. "No," Mark said. Dean slashed. Mark jerked back, but not far enough. The blade cut across his forearm. He hissed through his teeth and slammed his shoulder into Dean, driving him against the service door frame. The two men grappled, boots scraping, breath grunting, Dean's knife hand trapped between them. Tasha came from behind Dean. She did not have the hammer anymore. She had the lockout tag kit. It was a yellow plastic case with a metal clasp and a coil of red lockout hasps inside. Useless, I would have thought, except Tasha swung it by the handle and smashed it into Dean's ear. Dean roared. Mark got both hands on his wrist. "Eddie," Mark shouted. I moved without thinking. The only thing near me was the extension cord that had tied Kyle's ankle. I grabbed it, looped it around Dean's knife wrist, and pulled backward with everything I had. It was clumsy. It burned my palms. It worked for 2 seconds. 2 seconds was enough for Tasha to kick Dean's knee from the side. His leg buckled. The knife clattered onto the service walkway. Derek, still on the floor, slapped a hand over it and shoved it under the metal frame out of reach. Dean twisted toward him. Lena hit Dean with the broken pin, once across the back. She made a sound when she did it, not a scream, not a word. Something pulled out of her by fear and love and exhaustion. Dean went to one knee. Then Lane 8 cycled again. The machine behind him bucked with a hard metallic clack. The generator-fed circuit whined. A belt spun loose and slapped against the housing. Mark's eyes widened. Move. The jammed mechanism on lane 9 released at the same time. The sweep arm jerked upward, then dropped again halfway, rattling. The whole rear service space shuddered. Dean lunged blindly for the front, trying to get away from Mark, from us, from whatever he had half awakened and failed to control. His foot slid on the smear of oil near lane 8's frame. He grabbed for balance and caught the edge of the pinsetter housing. Bad place for a hand. Mark shouted, "Do." Dean's fingers went into the moving belt. He screamed. The sound changed everyone. Tasha covered her mouth. Lena turned away. Derek squeezed his eyes shut. Kyle made a small whimper from the floor. Mark moved toward Dean. Of course he did. Even after everything, Mark moved to save the man's hand. I hated him for it and loved him for it in the same breath. "Kill the generator feed," Mark shouted. "Where?" Tasha yelled. "Office." Red transfer switch by the freezer panel. Tasha ran. Dean was folded against the frame, knife gone, face white, fingers trapped in the belt assembly. The belt was not moving fast now, but it did not need to. It held and pulled and chewed by fractions. Mark braced one boot against the machine, grabbed the belt with his cut hands, and tried to relieve tension. "Eddie, wedge it." "With what?" "Anything hard," the broken pin. I grabbed it from Lena's hand. Its end was jagged. I jammed it between the belt and pulley housing. The first try slipped. The second caught. The belt smoked faintly, rubber smell filling the air, sharp and nauseating. Dean sobbed, "Please, please, please, stay still," Mark growled. "For once in your life." From the office hallway, Tasha screamed, "Which red switch?" "The one labeled generator." "They're all labeled in Ray's handwriting." Freezer panel, a pause that lasted too long. Then the hum died. Not just lane 8, not just lane 9. Emergency generator feed cut out with a descending whine, and the machines finally became dead metal. Dean sagged. Mark pried the belt back enough for him to pull his hand free. 3 fingers were bent wrong. Skin peeled at the knuckles. Blood hit the concrete in quick drops. Nobody celebrated. Tasha came back slowly, carrying a red-handled switch cover in one hand like evidence. Her face was pale. "It was tied into lanes 8 through 10, she said. There was a handwritten label under the panel. Special events backup. Mark leaned against the wall, breathing hard. "Ray, you cheap idiot." Dean cradled his mangled hand to his chest. For a moment, he looked smaller, just a hurt man in a wet jacket. Then he tried to run. He shoved Mark with his good shoulder and staggered down the service walkway toward the front, slipping between lane machines and cinder block. Tasha went after him. I followed. We came out from the side door near lane 8 just as Dean crossed the approach. He was heading for the front entrance he had unlocked. Beyond the doors, rain slanted through the parking lot lights. Still no police inside. No sirens close enough to matter. He reached the shoe counter. Then his foot hit the green ball again. The same stupid chipped house ball. This time it had rolled to rest beside the counter after knocking him down earlier, hidden in shadow below the rental racks. Dean stepped on it with the side of his shoe. His ankle folded. He crashed into the rental counter face first, bounced bounced off and dropped behind it. The sound he made was short and final, not dead final, finished final. Tasha got there first. She kicked his knife farther away, even though he did not have it anymore. Habit. Then she dropped one knee onto his back and pinned his good wrist. Move and I break something on purpose, she said. Dean did not move. I stood there panting, flashlight still in hand, beam shaking across the rental shoes. Outside, blue and red lights finally washed across the front windows. Not sudden saviors. Too late for that. They arrived after Derek's arm, after Kyle's ankle, after Mark's cut forearm, after Dean's fingers, after all of us had already become people who knew what a pin setter sounded like when it almost took someone apart. The police hit the front door and found it locked again because Dean had shut it behind him. Tasha laughed once. It sounded awful. I grabbed the key ring from behind the counter with fingers that barely worked. My palms were striped raw from the cord. My shoulder throbbed. My knees shook badly enough that I had to steady myself on the shoe rack. As I unlocked the front door, I saw my reflection in the glass, pale, dirty, older than I had been an hour ago. 2 officers came in first, weapons low but ready. Behind them came fire rescue and EMS with bags, radios, gloves, a stretcher. Real voices filled the building. Boots on carpet. Real people asking clear questions. Who's injured? Where's the suspect? Is the power isolated? Anybody else inside? Tasha pointed. Suspect behind the shoe counter. 2 injured behind lane 9. Mechanic cut. Electrical panel tampered with. Machines are off now. I think, Mark called from the back. They're off. His voice was tired enough to scare me all over again. Paramedics reached Derek and Kyle. Lena tried to answer questions and stay with both of them at once. Derek kept apologizing. Kyle kept asking if his leg was still there. Tasha sat on the edge of the shoe counter after an officer took over restraining Dean, one hand pressed to her ribs where Dean had slammed her. She winced every time she breathed. Mark stood in the service doorway with a towel wrapped around his forearm, watching Dean get handcuffed. Dean's mangled hand was wrapped by an EMT before they took him out. He kept looking back at Mark, not angry now, empty. That was worse. As they led him past lane 8, the dead monitor above it flickered once. Just once. A gray pulse across the glass. An officer saw it and looked up. Thought you said power was off. Mark stared at the screen. It is, he said. Then the monitor went black again. Nobody spoke for a full second. The officer frowned and made a note, probably about faulty wiring, because faulty wiring was real and could be photographed, documented, blamed. I looked at the pins at the end of lane 8. They stood in their perfect triangle, white under emergency light, arranged like nothing had happened at all. The first ordinary sound after all of it was the EMT tearing open a packet of gauze. That was what stayed with me. Not Dean screaming, not the pinsetter coughing itself awake, not the green ball knocking against his ankle. It was that clean paper rip, quick and practical, followed by a woman's voice saying, "Hold pressure here," like we were in a kitchen, and somebody had cut themselves slicing bagels. The building filled with people who knew what to do. That helped. It also made everything feel smaller in a way that hurt. A few minutes earlier, Lakeview lanes had felt sealed off from the rest of Erie, like the rain and the dead phones, and the blocked exits had cut us out of the city. Then the police came in with wet boots and radios crackling on their shoulders, and the fire crew wedged the side door open, and 2 paramedics knelt beside Kyle behind lane 9, asking him his name, the date, whether he could feel his toes. He could. Barely. Kyle Porter, 19, male, kept saying, I'm sorry, even though nobody had accused him of anything. He was strapped to a backboard because of the way his leg had twisted under him, and because he had taken a hit to the head hard enough to leave blood in his eyebrow and confusion in his eyes. Every time the paramedic touched his ankle, his hands clenched around the edges of the board. He tried not to cry and failed twice. Nobody gave him trouble for it. Derek Shaw, 22, male, sat against the cinder block wall with a blanket over his shoulders, 1 foot bare, his cut belt hanging open, his right hand wrapped in white gauze. He looked embarrassed in that deep, exhausted way people look after surviving something stupid and terrifying at the same time. Lena sat beside him, her knees pulled up, 1 arm locked around his shoulders like she had decided gravity could not be trusted with him anymore. Lena Shaw, 28, female, did not cry once after the police arrived. She turned brisk instead, too brisk. She answered questions. She gave Derek's date of birth. She corrected him when he said Kyle had just tripped earlier because he was trying to make it sound less bad. She told the paramedics he had no allergies, then paused and said, Wait, penicillin made him puke when he was 9. Does that count? Her voice only cracked when Derek looked at her and said, I thought you were going to be mad. She stared at him for a second. I am mad, she said. I'm going to be mad in the ambulance. I'm going to be mad at the hospital. I'm going to be mad all week. Derek nodded, eyes wet. Then she pressed her forehead to his temple and whispered, Don't ever make me pick you up from something this dumb again. Tasha Monroe, 31, female, refused transport for about 11 minutes. That was very Tasha. She sat on the edge of the shoe counter with 1 hand against her ribs and the other holding a paper cup of water someone had brought her from the snack bar sink. The water probably tasted like copper and old pipes. She drank it anyway. When an EMT asked her to rate her pain, she said, annoying, which was not a number. The EMT, a stocky woman with gray hair tucked under her cap, did not blink. Annoying from 1 to 10. 6 if I breathe. 3 if I don't. Try breathing, bossy, professionally. Tasha allowed herself to be checked after that. Bruised ribs may be cracked, they said. A swollen cheek from Dean's forearm. Scraped palms. No sign of internal injury, though they told her the hospital would know better. I have kids, she said. The EMT looked at her. Then let us make sure you can still pick them up tomorrow. That got through. Tasha looked away, jaw tight, and nodded once. Mark Feld, 44, male, was the last of us to sit down. He kept hovering near the machines, even while bleeding through the towel on his forearm. The firefighters had killed every feed they could find, tagged the panels, and still Mark would not stop staring at lanes 8 and 9, as if one of them might twitch just to spite him. Finally, a firefighter said, Sir, either sit down or I'm putting you down. Mark gave him a look. You and what union? Mine's bigger, Mark sat. His cut needed stitches. His right palm had reopened where he had sliced it earlier in the night, and the belt burn across his fingers was angry and red. He did not complain. That worried me more than the blood. Dean Mercer, 38, male, left in handcuffs and an ambulance. Not in that order exactly. They cuffed his good wrist to the stretcher rail, because his other hand was too mangled to cuff. 3 fingers were crushed badly enough that even I understood the words, possible partial amputation, when an EMT said them quietly to a police officer. Dean stared at the ceiling as they rolled him past lane 8. He did not look at Mark again. He did not look at Derek or Kyle or Lena. When he passed me, his eyes moved to the greenhouse ball lying by the shoe counter. The ball had a black scuff across one side from where his shoe had ridden over it. Dean laughed once. Small, airy, almost private. "Pins reset," he muttered. An officer leaned closer. "What was that?" Dean shut his mouth. That line went into a notebook somewhere. I saw the officer write it down. Whether it mattered later, I don't know. Police separated us for statements. That was the legal aftermath, and it was dull in the way real legal things are dull when you are exhausted. Nobody gives you the music from a crime show. They give you a folding chair near the arcade, a bottle of water, and questions you answer 3 times because details shift when your body is still shaking. An officer named Hale asked me to start from when I noticed something wrong. "Lane 8 made a sound," I said. "What kind of sound?" "A click." "What kind of click?" I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because I had spent the whole night trying to explain the difference between normal bowling alley noises and wrong ones. And here was this tired cop with rain on his shoulders asking me to define a click. "Careful," I said. He looked up from his notepad. "I know that sounds stupid." "No," he said, "keep going." So I did. I told him about the pins resetting, the green ball, Lena at the door, Derek's wallet, the blocked breaker room, the pounding, Dean entering with a key, Mark recognizing him, Kyle tied with the extension cord, the generator feed. When I got to the part where I ignored my father's texts, I stopped. Officer Hale waited. "That part doesn't matter," I said. "Okay," he said, and wrote something anyway. Maybe he wrote that I stopped. Maybe cops notice those things. Ray Bishop arrived at 2:17 a.m. He came in wearing a winter coat over pajama pants, hair sticking up on one side, face red before he had even spoken. Looked around at the police tape near the lanes, the EMTs, the dark monitors, the broken scoring console, the bloody towel on the service walkway, and Tasha sitting with an ice pack against her ribs. "What happened to my building?" he said. Tasha laughed again. This one sounded more like her. "Your building," she said. "That's your opening line." Ray looked at the officer beside him, then at Mark. "Mark." What? Mark stood up so fast the firefighter beside him reached out like he expected him to fall. "Dean tied emergency power into lanes 8 through 10, Mark said. "Side exit chained, rear door wedged, breaker room blocked with your boxes, safety interlocks bypassed. 2 kids nearly got chewed up because your cheap contractor still had keys." Ray's mouth opened and closed. I didn't know he still had keys. "No," Mark said. "You didn't check. That hung there." Ray looked smaller after that. Not innocent, just smaller. The kind of smaller a man gets when all his little savings and shortcuts arrive together with flashing lights. The police took Ray's keys. They took Mark's old maintenance logs. They photographed the breaker panel, the generator switch, the handwritten labels, the zip tie near lane 8, the extension cord from Kyle's ankle, the wedge under the rear service door, and the chain on the side exit. A fire marshal came and said words like unpermitted work, life safety violation, and immediate closure. Lakeview Lanes did not open the next day, or the next week. By sunrise, the rain had quit. The sky over West 12th Street turned turned a flat pale gray, and the parking lot looked cheap and harmless again. Puddles sat in the low spots. Lena's sedan was still there, driver's side door open, dome light dead. Someone had gone through her purse, but not taken anything. That bothered her more than theft would have. "Why open it then?" she asked. Nobody had a good answer. A firefighter guessed Dean had been looking for her phone or wallet or anything that might tell him who she was. A cop suggested he had wanted to scare her back inside, keep everyone clustered where he could control them. Both explanations made sense. Neither made her feel better. Before the ambulances left, Lena grabbed my sleeve. "Thank you," she said. I wanted to say I hadn't done much. I almost did. It was right there in my mouth, automatic and useless. Instead, I said, "I'm glad he's out." She nodded, then went with Derek. Kyle went in the second ambulance. He lifted one hand when they rolled him past us. Derek lifted his bandaged hand back, and for a second, they looked like two kids leaving a bad sleepover, instead of two young men who had been used as bait by a man with keys and a grudge. Mark refused the ambulance, but allowed a patrol officer to drive him to urgent care after the firefighter threatened again. Tasha went to the hospital too, mostly because the EMT with gray hair had the voice of a woman who had raised several children and could make disobedience feel childish. That left me outside the front doors with Officer Hale, Ray Bishop, and the greenhouse ball. Someone had carried it out with the evidence pile, then decided it was not evidence, then set it by the door. It sat on the wet concrete under the overhang, chipped thumb hole facing up. Officer Hale followed my eyes. "That the ball?" "Yeah." "Important." It tripped him. "Huh," he wrote that down too. At 6:03 a.m., I finally called my father. He answered on the fifth ring. "What?" he said, not hello. What behind him, I could hear a shop vac running, or maybe a pump, hard to tell. "It's me," I said. "I know who it is." "You okay?" A pause. "Basement's wet." "Yeah, I saw your texts." "Did you?" "I'm sorry." Another pause, longer. "You working?" "I was." "You done?" I looked back through the glass doors at Lakeview Lanes. The inside was dim, except for the daylight leaking in, and the red exit signs still glowing like tired eyes. Police tape crossed the approach to lanes 8 and 9. One pin stood alone on lane 8's deck, knocked out of formation at some point during the inspection and never reset. "I think I'm done there for a while," I said. My father made a sound that might have been a grunt, or might have been something gentler that lost courage. "You need help with the basement?" I asked. "I called your cousin." "I can still come." "You don't have to, I know." The line carried the soft electrical hiss of distance. Then he said, "Bring coffee." So I did. That was the almost ordinary part. I drove south with my hands wrapped in gauze from the cord burns, and my shoulder aching every time I turned the wheel. I stopped at a gas station for 2 coffees and a pack of powdered donuts because my father liked pretending he did not like them. My shoes left black pinsetter dust on the floor mat. My phone kept buzzing with unknown numbers. Police follow-up, Tasha checking in, a voicemail from Ray I did not play. My father's basement smelled like wet cardboard and old concrete. The pump had clogged with leaves and a strip of insulation. We cleared it. We dragged boxes onto the stairs. We did not talk much at first. That was fine. Not every repair needs a confession. Eventually, while we were wringing out towels into a utility sink, he saw the bruises on my wrists. "What happened?" I thought about saying work accident. Then I didn't. "Long night," I said. He waited, so I told him some of it, not all enough. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he looked at the water creeping back toward the drain and said, "You always did wait too long before calling for help." I almost snapped at him. Then I looked at his bad hip, the wet cuffs of his jeans, the way his hands shook slightly from too much work and not enough sleep. "Yeah," I said, "I know." Lakeview stayed closed through the investigation. Dean Mercer was charged with kidnapping, assault, reckless endangerment, unlawful restraint, criminal mischief, and a few things involving tampering that I only saw later in an online docket. He claimed he never meant to kill anyone. According to Tasha, who heard it from an officer who probably should not have told her, Dean said he wanted Mark to admit what he did and wanted Ray to see what bad wiring looked like when it mattered. That was the closest anyone got to a motive that sounded like language. Ray lost the business eventually. Not right away, but eventually. Insurance dragged. Inspectors found enough violations to turn the building into paperwork with walls. The sign stayed up for months, unlit. The cartoon bowling pin smiling at traffic on West 12th like it had missed the announcement. Derek's hand healed, mostly. Kyle needed surgery on his ankle and had headaches for weeks. Lena sent Tasha flowers and a card with handwriting so neat it looked printed. Tasha kept the card taped behind the counter at her next job, which was managing a pharmacy shift where, according to her, the machines were less murderous but more judgmental. Mark got 12 stitches and a scar he pretended not to show people. He retired from bowling alley work, then got bored, then started repairing garage doors, which seemed to me like leaving one kind of moving death trap for another. I did not go back inside Lakeview after that morning. Not officially. A month later, I drove past at dusk because I told myself it was on the way to somewhere else. It was. The parking lot was empty except for weeds pushing through cracks and a single shopping cart near the side wall. The windows were dark. The side emergency door had a new chain on it, this one from the city, with a red violation tag hanging flat in the wind. I sat in my car across the street and looked at the front doors. I expected to feel something clean. Closure maybe, anger, relief. What I felt was the old urge to explain everything. Dean had keys. Dean knew the wiring. Dean moved the ball, or maybe it had been left in the return track before we noticed. Dean tied Kyle. Dean used the generator feed. Dean understood just enough about the machines to make them dangerous, and just little enough to nearly lose his own hand. Human, mechanical, real. Then inside the dark building, Lane 8's overhead monitor flickered once. A gray pulse, so faint I could have imagined it. I turned off my engine and listened through the closed car windows. No clatter, no hum, no careful click, just traffic on wet pavement and a gull somewhere toward the lake. After a while, I drove away. I never told the police about that part. There was nothing to tell, really. A bad capacitor, residual charge, a reflection from a passing truck, some leftover fault in a building full of leftover faults. That is the explanation I keep. Most days it holds. That's tonight's story. If it gives you chills, make sure to like, subscribe to Mia Horror Stories, and tap the bell so you never miss what's coming next. And if you're still brave enough, there are more dark tales waiting for you right here on the channel. Go watch another, if you dare.